My 72nd birthday gift was not a cake or a card or a hug from my granddaughter. It was a one-way ticket to hell. My son dragged me out of his car in front of a decaying brick building and screamed into my face. "You are worthless human trash," he yelled. "You are a burden. Rot in here so we can finally live." He stole my phone. He stole my wallet. He stole my dignity. He left me standing in the rain with nothing but a suitcase full of old clothes to die alone. It was a big mistake. A massive miscalculation, because he didn't check who owned the facility. The director of the nursing home happened to be Dr. Marcus Sterling, my best friend of 45 years. We sat in his office, drank whiskey, and watched my son on the security cameras celebrating my demise. I didn't call the police. I called my lawyer, and the game had just begun. Before I tell you how I dismantled my son's life piece by piece, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the very people you sacrificed everything for. My name is Harrison Banks. I am 72 years old, and for 40 years I ran one of the largest logistics companies on the East Coast. I know how to move things. I know how to manage supply chains. I know how to spot a weak link in the system. But the weakest link in my life wasn't an employee or a competitor. It was my own flesh and blood. I woke up on the morning of my birthday feeling the familiar ache in my knees. Arthritis is a thief that steals your mobility inch by inch, but it cannot touch your mind. My mind was as sharp as the day I negotiated my first $1 million contract. I sat up in bed and looked at the photo of my late wife, Sarah, on the nightstand. She passed 5 years ago. Since then, the house felt too big. The silence was too loud. I lived in the guest wing of the estate I had built. My son Damon and his wife Courtney lived in the main house. I had invited them to move in when Sarah died because I thought it would be good for my granddaughter Maya. I wanted to be close to her. I wanted to hear little feet running in the hallway. I didn't realize I was inviting wolves into the sheep pen. I got dressed slowly. I put on my best suit. It was a navy blue bespoke suit from Savile Row. Even if I was just staying home for dinner, I believed a man should have standards. I walked into the kitchen expecting to smell breakfast. Maybe pancakes, maybe bacon. It was my birthday after all. The kitchen was cold. There was no food on the table. Courtney was standing by the counter drinking a green smoothie. She was a woman of 35 who spent more money on her face cream than I used to spend on rent. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Happy birthday, Harrison," she said flatly. She didn't call me Dad. She never did. Damon walked in a moment later. My son. He was 40 years old, but he still walked with the swagger of a teenager who thinks the world owes him a living. He was wearing a tracksuit and looking at his phone. "Happy birthday, old man," he said without looking up. "Thank you, son," I said. "Where is Maya?" "She is at a school retreat," Courtney said quickly. "She won't be back until Sunday." I felt a pang of disappointment. Maya was the only light in this house. She was the only one who looked at me with love instead of calculation. Damon clapped his hands together. "But don't worry, Dad, we have a surprise for you." "A surprise?" I asked. "We are taking you out," Damon said, grinning. "A spa day. Just the three of us. We found this exclusive wellness center upstate. Massages, hot springs, the works. You need to relax, Dad. You have been so stiff lately." I looked at him. I wanted to believe him. Every father wants to believe his son loves him. I pushed down the little voice in my head that said, "Damon never spends money on anyone but himself." "That sounds nice," I said. "Let me get my wallet." "No need," Damon said quickly. "It is our treat. Just pack an overnight bag. We might stay the night if the treatment runs late." I went to my room. I packed a small suitcase, pajamas, a change of clothes, my toothbrush, and the picture of Sarah. I never slept anywhere without it. We got into the car. It was my car, a vintage Mercedes S-Class that I kept in pristine condition. Courtney demanded to drive. She said my driving made her nervous. I sat in the back seat like a child. Damon sat in the front passenger seat. The drive started normally enough. We drove through the suburbs of Atlanta past the manicured lawns and the country clubs. But then Courtney turned onto the highway heading north. She drove fast. Too fast. "Slow down, Courtney," I said, gripping the handle. "Relax, Harrison," she snapped, looking at me in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were cold. Blue ice. We are on a schedule. Damon didn't defend me. He turned up the radio. Loud rap music filled the cabin, shaking the leather seats. He knew I hated loud noise. We drove for 2 hours. The scenery changed. The nice suburbs faded away, replaced by industrial parks and rundown strip malls. The sky turned gray and heavy with rain. "Where is this spa?" I asked, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "It looks like we are in the middle of nowhere." "Almost there, Dad," Damon said. "Stop complaining." "You always complain." He turned to Courtney and whispered something. They both laughed. It was a cruel secret laugh. Finally, Courtney pulled off the highway. She drove down a cracked asphalt road lined with dead trees. We pulled up to a large iron gate. A sign hung crookedly on the hinges. Silver Horizon Care Facility. I looked at the building behind the gate. It wasn't a resort. It was a fortress. Red brick. Small windows with bars on them. The grass was overgrown. It looked like a prison for people whose only crime was getting old. "This is a nursing home," I said. "This is a nursing." My heart started to hammer against my ribs. "It is a wellness center for seniors," Damon said. He didn't look at me. Courtney honked the horn. The gate buzzed open. She drove through and pulled up to the main entrance. There was no valet. There was no doorman, just a concrete slab and a metal door. "Get out," Courtney said. She unlocked the doors. "What?" I asked. "Get out," Damon yelled. He opened his door and jumped out. He walked around to the back and yanked my door open. "We are leaving you here, Dad." I stared at him. I couldn't process the words. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. "Leaving me," I stammered. "But this is a home. I have a home. I built that house, Damon." "Not anymore," Damon said. He reached in and grabbed my arm. His grip was hard, painful. He dragged me out of the car. My legs buckled. I stumbled onto the wet pavement. "Damon, what are you doing?" I cried. He grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and threw it on the ground. It landed in a puddle of muddy water. "I am doing what I should have done 5 years ago," he screamed. His face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "I am getting rid of the dead weight." He loomed over me. He looked like a giant, and I felt very small. "You are a burden," he spat. "You wander around that house like a ghost. Courtney can't stand you. She says you smell like Old Spice and decay. We can't have parties. We can't have friends over, because the old man is always there watching, judging." "I judged you because you are lazy," I said, drawing myself up. "I judged you because you spend money you don't earn." "Shut up," Damon roared. He pushed me. I stumbled back against the brick wall. "You are worthless," he yelled. "You are human waste. You think you are some big-shot businessman? You are just a cripple now, and we are tired of taking care of you." He reached into my jacket pocket. "Hey!" I shouted. He ripped my wallet out. He ripped my phone out of my hand. "I'll take these," he said. "You won't need credit cards in here. They provide 3 meals a day. Gruel, probably." "Damon, please," I begged. My voice cracked. I looked at Courtney. She was sitting in the driver's seat applying lipstick in the mirror. She didn't even look at me. "Courtney," I said, "please." "Maya. What will you tell Maya?" Courtney rolled down the window. She looked at me with a smirk that chilled my blood. "We will tell her you went crazy, Harrison. We will tell her you ran away. We will tell her Grandpa lost his mind and we don't know where he is. She will cry for a week and then she will forget you." "No," I whispered. "No, she won't." Damon stepped back. He held my wallet up like a trophy. "This is my birthday present to myself, Dad," he said. "Freedom." He got back into the car. "Rot in here, old man," he said. "Rot in here so we can finally live." He slammed the door. Courtney hit the gas. The tires screeched on the wet pavement, kicking up a spray of dirty water onto my expensive suit. I watched the taillights of my own car fade into the distance. I stood there in the rain. I was 72 years old. I had built an empire. I had employed thousands of people. I had shaken hands with governors. And now I was standing in a parking lot with wet socks and a broken heart, abandoned by the boy I had taught to ride a bike. The rain mixed with the tears on my face. I felt a coldness that went deeper than the bone. It was the coldness of absolute betrayal. I looked at the building, Silver Horizon. It looked ominous, a place where people went to be forgotten. But then I saw something. Above the door there was a small brass plaque. It was tarnished and hard to read in the gloom. I stepped closer. I squinted through my wet glasses. Proprietor Dr. M. Sterling. My breath caught in my throat. M. Sterling. Marcus. Marcus Sterling, my platoon leader in Vietnam, my best friend, the man who had pulled me out of a burning Jeep in Da Nang in 1971. We played chess every Thursday, but he had never told me the name of the investment group he used to buy up distressed properties. He just said he was in senior real estate. I started to laugh. It started as a low rumble in my chest and grew into a loud, barking laugh that echoed off the brick walls. I must have looked insane standing there in the rain laughing at nothing. Damon thought he had dropped me in a dungeon. He didn't know he had just dropped me in my own headquarters. The front door opened. A large man in a security uniform stepped out holding an umbrella. He looked at me suspiciously. "Sir," he said, "can I help you? You can't be out here loitering." I looked at him. I straightened my tie. I brushed the water off my lapel. I stood up straight, ignoring the pain in my knees. "I am not loitering, son," I said, my voice booming with the authority of a CEO. "I am Harrison Banks, and I am here to see Marcus Sterling. Tell him his chess partner has arrived. And tell him to pour the good scotch." The guard looked at me confused. "Mr. Sterling is in a meeting, sir." "Interrupt him," I said. "Tell him it is a code red. Tell him the eagle has landed and the eagle is very, very angry." The guard hesitated, then nodded. I picked up my wet suitcase. I walked through the doors of Silver Horizon. I didn't walk in as a victim. I walked in as a man on a mission. Damon had stolen my phone. He had stolen my wallet. He had stolen my car. But he had made one fatal error. He left me with my mind. And he was about to find out that Harrison Banks doesn't get mad. Harrison Banks gets even. The smell of a nursing home is specific. It does not smell like a hospital which smells of sharp antiseptic and urgency. A nursing home smells of lavender air freshener trying to cover up the scent of boiled cabbage and old urine. It smells of waiting. It smells of the slow ticking of a clock that nobody is watching anymore. The security guard marched me through the automatic glass doors. My Italian leather shoes squeaked on the linoleum floor, leaving muddy footprints with every step. I was dripping wet. My suit was ruined. My hair, usually combed back with precision, was plastered to my forehead. I clutched my soggy suitcase like it was a life raft in the middle of the ocean. We walked past the nurse's station. A woman in blue scrubs looked up. She had tired eyes and a name tag that hung crookedly on her chest. She saw me and didn't see a CEO. She didn't see a man who had built a logistics empire. She saw an intake, a number, a bed filler. "Room 104, she said without asking my name. "Down the hall to the left. Dr. Evans will do the assessment in the morning." "I am not staying until morning," I said. My voice shook. It wasn't fear. It was the adrenaline of rage crashing into the wall of shock. "I demand to use a telephone. My son, there has been a mistake." The nurse sighed. She picked up a clipboard. "Family drop-off," she muttered, making a check mark. "We get a lot of those on Fridays. Look, Mr. Banks is it? The phone is for residents with privileges. You are in the observation period. No phone, no outside contact for 48 hours. It helps with the transition." Transition. That is a polite word for prison. The guard took my arm. His grip was firm, not violent, but condescending, like he was guiding a toddler. "Come on, Pops," he said. "Let's get you dry." He led me down a long beige hallway. We passed open doors. I saw people inside. Old people. People sitting in wheelchairs staring at televisions that were turned off. People lying in beds looking at the ceiling. They looked like discarded furniture. Is this my future, I thought? Is this where Harrison Banks ends? We reached room 104. It was a small room with one window. The window looked out onto the brick wall of the next building. There were bars on it. The guard pushed me in. "Dinner is at 5, he said. "Don't make a fuss." The night nurse has a heavy hand with the sedative needle. He closed the door. Click. I heard the lock turn. I stood in the middle of the room. There was a single bed with a plastic mattress cover, a nightstand with nothing on it, a chair that looked uncomfortable. I dropped my suitcase. It made a wet thud on the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed. My knees were screaming in pain. The damp cold from the rain had seeped into my joints. I wrapped my arms around myself and started to shiver. I closed my eyes and saw Damon's face. I saw the sneer. "You are human waste." My own son. The boy I had sat up with when he had chicken pox. The boy I had bailed out of jail when he got a DUI in college. The man I had given a job, a house, a life. He had thrown me away. For a moment, just a brief, terrible moment, I broke. A sob ripped its way out of my throat. It was a jagged, ugly sound. I buried my face in my hands and wept. I wept for Sarah, who wasn't here to see this. I wept for Maya, who was being lied to. I wept for the fool I had been trusting a viper just because he shared my blood. But then the weeping stopped. Something else took its place. A heat in my belly, a fire in my chest. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled, but they were strong. These hands had loaded crates on the docks of Baltimore when I was 20. These hands had signed checks that kept hundreds of families fed. "I am Harrison Banks," I whispered to the empty room. I stood up. I walked to the door. I banged on it with my fist. "Open this door," I shouted. Silence. I banged harder. I kicked it with my wet shoe. I said, "Open this damn door. I want to speak to the director." I heard footsteps. The guard's voice came through the wood. "Hey, quiet down in there, or I'm calling the orderly." I didn't quiet down. I ramped up. "My name is Harrison Banks," I roared. "I am a personal friend of Marcus Sterling. If you don't open this door and take me to him right now, I will buy this building just to fire you." Silence again. Longer this time. Then I heard a murmur of voices. "He knows the owner's name," the guard said. "Anyone can read the plaque," the nurse replied. "Take me to Sterling," I screamed. Tell him Blue Falcon is in the nest." That was our code. Vietnam, 1971. Blue Falcon. It meant friend in trouble. It meant drop everything. I heard the key turn in the lock. The door opened. The guard looked at me with a mix of annoyance and uncertainty. "Mr. Sterling is in his office," he said. "If you go up there and he doesn't know you, you are going straight to the psych ward." "Do you understand? Lead the way, son," I said, straightening my wet jacket. "And walk fast." We marched back down the hall past the nurse's station toward a set of double doors marked administration. The air here smelled different. It smelled of lemon polish and expensive coffee. We stopped in front of a heavy oak door. The guard knocked. "Enter," a deep voice boomed from inside. The guard opened the door and shoved me gently inside. "Mr. Sterling, this new intake. He is making a scene. He claims he knows you." I stepped into the room. It was a beautiful office. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with books, and behind the desk, sitting with his back to the window, was a man I hadn't seen in 2 years. Marcus Sterling. He was bald now, and his beard was white as snow, but his shoulders were still as broad as a linebacker's. He was reading a file. He didn't look up immediately. "What is the patient's name?" he asked gruffly. "Harrison Banks," I said. Marcus froze. His hand holding the pen stopped in midair. He looked up slowly. He saw me. He saw the wetsuit. He saw the mud on my shoes. He saw the devastation in my eyes. "Harry," he whispered. He stood up so fast his chair knocked over backward. "Harry, is that you?" He rounded the desk in 2 strides. He didn't look at the guard. He waved a hand, dismissing him. "Get out," he barked. "Close the door." The guard vanished. The door clicked shut. Marcus grabbed me by the shoulders. He looked me up and down. "My God, Harry," he said. "You look like you swam here. What happened? I thought you were living in that mansion with your boy. Why are you on the intake list?" I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. The shame washed over me again. "How do you tell your best friend that your own son threw you out like garbage?" Marcus pulled me into a hug. It was a bear hug. Solid. Real. I held on to him, and I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for hours. "Damon," I choked out. Marcus pulled back. His eyes darkened. "What did he do, Harry?" "He brought me here," I said, my voice steadying. "It is my birthday, Marcus. He said we were going to a spa. He drove me to the gate. He threw my suitcase in a puddle. He took my wallet. He took my phone. I looked Marcus in the eye. He said I was trash. He said to rot in here so he could live." Marcus's face went purple. The veins in his neck bulged. He turned and slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk. "The son of a bitch!" he roared. "The ungrateful, parasitic little son of a bitch!" He grabbed the phone on his desk. "I am calling the police," he said. "I am calling the sheriff. Kidnapping, elder abuse, grand larceny. I will have him in cuffs within the hour. I will ruin him, Harry. He started to dial. Stop, I said. Marcus looked at me, the receiver halfway to his ear. What, Harry? He left you to die. Put the phone down, Marcus, I said. I walked over to the leather chair and sat down. I felt the exhaustion seeping into my bones, but my mind was racing. It was cold. It was calculating. If you call the police, what happens? I asked. He gets arrested. Maybe he does a few months. He claims it was a misunderstanding. He claims I am senile. He hires a lawyer with my money. I leaned forward. And even if he goes to jail, he still thinks he is right. He still thinks he is the victim. He still thinks the world owes him. Marcus slowly lowered the phone. So what do you want to do? He asked. Let him get away with it. No, I said. I want to teach him. I looked around the office. I saw the security monitors on the wall. I saw the computer systems. You own this place, Marcus, I asked. Lock, stock, and barrel, Marcus said. It is one of 12 facilities I own. And Damon doesn't know that I asked. No, Marcus said. Nobody knows. I keep my name off the brochures. Good, I said. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was still falling. Somewhere out there, Damon was probably popping a bottle of champagne, celebrating his freedom. He thought the game was over. He didn't know the game had just changed players. I want to stay here, Marcus, I said. Marcus blinked. Here, in the nursing home. Yes, I said. But not in room 104. I pointed to the wall of monitors. I want to turn this room into a command center. I want access to my accounts through your secure server. I want a burner phone, and I want you to enter me into the system as a John Doe. Harrison Banks does not exist in your records. Marcus stroked his white beard. A slow grin started to spread across his face. It was a dangerous grin, the kind of grin he used to have right before we ambushed a convoy. You want to play dead? He asked. I want to play ghost, I corrected. I want him to think I am rotting, I said. I want him to get comfortable. I want him to spend the money. I want him to think he has won. And then Marcus asked, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. And then I said, taking the glass. I am going to pull the floor out from under him. I am going to strip him of every dime, every lie, and every excuse until he is standing naked in the rain, just like he left me. Marcus raised his glass. To the hunt, he said. To the hunt, I replied. We clinked glasses. The scotch burned going down, but it warmed me up. Marcus picked up the phone again. But this time he didn't dial the police. He dialed the kitchen. Chef, he said, send up 2 ribeye steaks, rare, and a bottle of the 96 Cabernet. We have a VIP guest. He hung up and looked at me. You need dry clothes, Harry. I have a spare suit in the closet. It might be a little big in the shoulders, but it is better than smelling like wet wool. I changed into Marcus's suit. It was a gray flannel. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a man ready for war. I sat down at Marcus's computer. Let's begin, I said. I logged into my cloud server. I knew Damon would try to access the bank accounts tonight. He had my wallet, but he didn't have my passwords. I typed rapidly. Marcus pulled up a chair next to me. What are you doing? He asked. I am setting a trap, I said. I am putting a spending limit on the black card. Not a decline, just a limit. Enough to let him buy dinner, but not enough to buy the champagne. Why, I asked myself. Because confusion is the first step of fear, I said. I hit enter. Let him enjoy his night, I whispered. Because tomorrow the hangover starts, and it is going to be a long one. Revenge in the 21st century does not look like a duel with pistols at dawn. It looks like a man sitting in a leather chair behind a mahogany desk typing on a secure laptop while sipping 18-year-old scotch. It is silent. It is digital. And if you do it right, it is absolutely devastating. I sat in Marcus's office, which we had christened the command center. The rain had stopped outside, but inside the screens in front of me a storm was brewing. Marcus had set me up with a direct link to my home security system and my banking portal. He owned the nursing home, but he also owned a lot of tech stock, and his internet connection was faster than the Pentagon's. I watched the monitor on the left. It showed the living room of my estate, the house I had designed, the house I had paid for. It was only 8 hours since they had dumped me at the gate, but they were already erasing me. Damon was moving furniture. He was pushing my favorite recliner, the one Sarah bought me before she passed into the hallway. He was replacing it with a sleek, uncomfortable-looking modern sofa that they had dragged out of the garage. Courtney was walking around with a glass of my best wine, directing the movers. They were laughing. I turned up the volume on the feed. Put it over there, Damon, Courtney said, pointing to the spot where my bookshelf used to be. We need a dance floor. The DJ will set up in the corner. A DJ, I whispered to the screen. On a Tuesday night. They were throwing a party, a celebration of their liberation. They were dancing on my grave before the body was even cold. I felt a surge of heat in my chest, but I pushed it down. Anger is a fire that burns you. Calculation is a cold steel blade that cuts them. I turned to the screen on the right. The banking portal. I saw the transactions pending. Liquor World $2,000. Elite Catering $5,000. Saks Fifth Avenue $12,000. They were bleeding me dry. They had my physical wallet, which contained my Centurion card, the black card. No limit, or so they thought. Marcus leaned over my shoulder. He smelled of cigar smoke and expensive cologne. You should freeze it, Harry, he said. Cut them off. One click and the card turns into a piece of plastic. I shook my head. No, Marcus, I said. If I freeze it, they know I am fighting back. They will think I got to a phone. They will come here to check on me. Or worse, they will run. I typed a command into the system. I want to play with them, I said. I want to gaslight them. I want them to think the world is breaking, but they don't know why. I accessed the security settings of the card. I didn't cancel it. Instead, I engaged a protocol called random fraud detection. It is a feature used for high net worth clients to protect against theft without shutting down the account entirely. It flags transactions based on geolocation and spending velocity. But I tweaked the algorithm. I set a hard cap on single transactions over $500. But here was the kicker. I set it to be intermittent. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. Unpredictability, I said to Marcus. It creates anxiety. I hit enter. Settings updated. Now let's watch the show, I said. The first domino fell an hour later. Courtney wasn't at the house anymore. I tracked her GPS via the transaction attempts. She was at Phipps Plaza, the most expensive mall in Atlanta. She was celebrating her new status as the lady of the manor. She walked into the Chanel boutique. I couldn't see her, but I could see the digital footprint. Transaction attempt Chanel boutique. Amount $8,500. Item handbag. I watched the screen. The system queried the new rule I had just set. Status declined. Reason suspected fraud. I imagined the scene. Courtney standing there in her designer heels holding a bag that cost more than a car. The sales associate, a polished young woman, scanning the card. The beep. The awkward silence. I am sorry, ma'am. The card was declined. Courtney would be furious. She would demand they run it again. Transaction attempt 2 Chanel boutique. Amount $8,500. Status declined. Code 05. Do not honor. I smiled. 5 minutes later, my burner phone didn't ring, but the system alerted me to an incoming call on the customer service line. It was Damon. He was calling the bank's VIP concierge. I put on my headphones and tapped into the recorded line. I have been a Diamond member of this bank for 30 years. I have access to the archives. I heard Damon's voice. He sounded stressed. Look, I am telling you, there is money in the account, Damon was shouting. My wife is at the store and she looks like an idiot. Fix it. The operator was calm. Sir, I see the attempts. The security system flagged them as unusual activity. We need to verify the account holder's identity to lift the hold. I am the account holder, Damon lied. I am Harrison Banks. Very good, Mr. Banks, the operator said. Please state your voice passphrase for biometric verification. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of scotch. Voice verification. I had set it up 3 years ago when deepfake technology started getting good. My voice was my password. Damon stammered. The phrase, yes, sir, the operator said. The phrase you recorded when you opened the account. Damon didn't know the phrase. How could he? It was a line from a poem Sarah loved. Hope is the thing with feathers. I have a cold, Damon said, trying to lower his voice to sound like me. My throat is sore. Can't we do security questions? I am sorry, Mr. Banks, the operator said, his voice turning suspicious. For transactions of this size, voice ID is mandatory. If you cannot verify, I cannot lift the flag. This is ridiculous, Damon screamed. Do you know who I am? I know who you are claiming to be, sir, the operator said coldly. I am going to leave a note on the file. Please visit a branch with 2 forms of government ID to reset your access. Click. Damon hung up. I looked at Marcus. He was laughing silently, his belly shaking. He is locked out, Marcus said. He is locked out of the controls, I said. But the card is still active for small stuff. I looked back at the house feed. Damon was pacing the living room. He called Courtney. I could hear his side of the conversation because he was shouting at the speakerphone. Babe, just leave the bag, he yelled. The bank is glitching. Dad must have messed up the settings before he went senile. I can't fix it over the phone. I heard Courtney screeching on the other end. I am not leaving this bag, Damon. The salesgirl is looking at me like I am a pauper. Use another card. I don't have another card, Damon yelled back. Dad took my cards last month, remember? Just come home. The party is starting. Courtney hung up on him. I watched Damon kick the new sofa. He looked around the room. The guests were starting to arrive. People I didn't know. People who looked like they were there for the free booze. Damon plastered a fake smile on his face. He greeted them. He accepted a bottle of wine from a man in a cheap suit. Hey man, thanks for coming, Damon said. Make yourself at home. This is all mine now. All yours, I thought, including the limitations. The party picked up steam. The music was thumping. The bass vibrated through the camera microphone. They were drinking my reserve stock scotch. They were dancing on my Persian rugs. Then the pizza arrived. Not just a few pizzas, a tower of pizzas. 20 boxes from the best wood-fired place in the city. Damon had ordered them to feed his entourage. The delivery driver stood in the foyer holding the bill. That will be $480, sir. Damon reached into his pocket. He pulled out my black card. He handed it to the driver with a flourish. Put a 20% tip on there, my man, Damon said arrogantly. The driver swiped the card on his handheld terminal. I watched the banking screen. Transaction Pizza Palace. Amount $576. The limit was $500. Status declined. The driver frowned. It didn't go through, boss. Damon laughed nervously. The guests were watching. A hush fell over the foyer. Try it again, Damon said. It is a Centurion card. It can buy a jet. The driver swiped again. Status declined. Nah, man, the driver said, shaking his head. It says limit exceeded. Damon started to sweat. I could see the sheen on his forehead in the high-definition feed. He looked around. Courtney walked in at that moment empty-handed and furious. Babe, do you have cash? Damon whispered. Are you kidding me? Courtney snapped loud enough for everyone to hear. You have the wallet. Damon. Damon turned to his friends. Hey guys, he said, his voice cracking. Technical difficulties. Does anyone have some cash? I will Venmo you double tomorrow. Silence. These were fair-weather friends. Parasites. They didn't carry cash, and they certainly didn't lend it. Finally, the guy in the cheap suit sighed and pulled out a wad of 20s. I got you, Damon, he said, peeling off the bills. But this is embarrassing, man. I thought you were the king of the castle. I am, Damon insisted, grabbing the pizza boxes. Just a bank glitch. He shoved the pizza at the guests, trying to buy back their respect with pepperoni and cheese. But the mood had shifted. The air in the room had changed from celebration to skepticism. They were wondering why the millionaire son couldn't pay for dinner. I sat back in my chair. This was better than any spa day. Marcus poured me another splash of scotch. You are a cruel man, Harrison, he said admiringly. I am a teacher, Marcus, I said, taking the glass. And the first lesson is that money isn't magic. It is a tool, and if you don't know how to use the tool, it will cut your fingers off. I looked at the screen one last time. Courtney was arguing with Damon in the corner. She was pointing at her empty ring finger where the new bag should have been. Damon was drinking straight from the bottle, trying to drown his humiliation. They were miserable, and they were in my house. Sleep well, children, I whispered. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I was going to turn up the heat. Tonight was just the appetizer. Tomorrow we serve the main course. And it is going to be very, very cold. You can freeze a bank account with a click of a button. You can lock a door with a digital command. You can watch a house through a camera lens from 10 miles away. I had done all of that. I had turned my son's life into a logistical nightmare in less than 24 hours. But there is one thing technology cannot do. It cannot hug your granddaughter. It cannot wipe a tear from her cheek. And it cannot tell you if the most important person in your world is safe. For 2 days, I had sat in Marcus's office watching Damon and Courtney destroy my home. I saw them drinking my wine. I saw them fighting over declined credit cards. but I hadn't seen Maya. Her room was dark on the monitors. Courtney had said she was on a school retreat, but my gut told me something was wrong. My gut is rarely wrong. It is what kept me alive in the jungle of Vietnam and the boardroom of Wall Street. I was pacing the floor of the command center when Marcus walked in. He wasn't wearing his suit. He was wearing a cardigan and holding a clipboard, looking every bit the part of the kindly nursing home director. "Stop pacing, Harry," he said. "You are going to wear a hole in my Persian rug." "Where is she, Marcus?" I asked, stopping by the window. "It is Friday. The retreat should be over. Why isn't she home?" Marcus sat down. He put the clipboard on the desk. "She is not home because she is here," he said. I froze. "Here?" I asked. "In the nursing home." Marcus smiled. I pulled some strings. Every month we host a volunteer program called Generations Connect. The local private schools send students over to read to the residents' play checkers, that sort of thing. It looks good on their college applications. He tapped the clipboard. St. Jude's Academy is on the roster for today, and Miss Maya Banks is on the bus that just pulled into the parking lot. I felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost knocked me over. Relief mixed with terror. I looked down at my clothes. I was wearing Marcus's spare suit. I looked presentable, but I was still an inmate in this asylum. "Does she know?" I asked. "No," Marcus said. "She thinks she is coming to volunteer. She thinks you are missing. Damon filed a police report yesterday claiming you wandered off in a fugue state." My blood ran cold. Wandered off. That was their story. "I need to see her," I said. "I set up the private activity room down the hall," Marcus said. "No cameras, no nurses. Just you and her. But Harry, be careful. She is a smart kid, but she is still a kid. If she blows your cover..." "She won't," I said, cutting him off. "She is a Banks. We are made of sterner stuff." I walked down the hallway. My heart was hammering against my ribs harder than it had when I was facing enemy fire. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of seeing the damage my son had inflicted on his own daughter. I opened the door to the activity room. It was a cheerful space, painted yellow with puzzles on the tables and sunlight streaming through the windows. She was standing by the bookshelf. Maya. She was 14, but she looked younger today. She was wearing her school uniform, a plaid skirt and a navy blazer, but her shoulders were slumped. Her hair, usually braided with precision, was messy. And when she turned around, I saw her eyes. They were red, swollen. She was holding a book, but she wasn't reading it. She was staring at nothing. "Maya," I whispered. She dropped the book. It hit the floor with a loud clap. She spun around. She stared at me. For a second, she looked terrified. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. Damon had told her I was crazy. Damon had told her I was gone. "Grandpa," she breathed. She didn't run at first. She took a hesitant step. Is it really you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Mom said you were..." "She said you were lost. She said you didn't know who we were anymore." I dropped to one knee, ignoring the sharp pain in my joints. I opened my arms. "I know exactly who you are," I said. "You are Maya Banks, my astronaut, my favorite person in the world." She broke. She ran across the room and slammed into me, burying her face in my shoulder. She sobbed. It wasn't the quiet crying of a child who skinned her knee. It was the deep, gut-wrenching sobbing of a child who has been carrying the weight of the world alone. I held her tight. I rocked her back and forth just like I used to when she was a baby. "I got you," I whispered. "I got you. Grandpa is here." We stayed like that for a long time. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes with her sleeve. She looked at me, searching my face for signs of the madness her parents had warned her about. "You look normal," she whispered. "You don't look crazy." "I am not crazy, Maya," I said firmly. "I am angry, but I am perfectly sane." She sniffled and sat down on one of the small chairs. I pulled another chair close and held her hands. They were cold. "Tell me what happened," I said. "Tell me everything." Maya took a deep breath. She looked down at her lap. "They came to get me from the retreat early," she said. "Dad was driving your car. He was driving really fast. He was happy, Grandpa. That was the scary part. He was singing." "Singing," I repeated. My stomach churned. "Yeah," she said. "He told me that you had an episode. He said you got violent and confused and you ran away into the woods. He said the police were looking for you, but what?" I asked. "But he winked at Mom," she whispered. "When he said it, he winked. And Mom laughed. She said, "Finally, we have some space." I squeezed her hands. "What else, Maya?" She looked up at me, and fresh tears welled up in her eyes. "The piano," she choked out. My heart stopped. The Steinway. It wasn't just a piano, it was Sarah's piano. My wife had taught Maya to play on those ivory keys. It was the soul of our home. "What about the piano?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "They sold it," she sobbed. "Yesterday, a man came with a truck. Dad said it was taking up too much room. He said nobody plays it anyway. I screamed at him, Grandpa. I told him Grandma plays it in heaven. I told him I play it. And what did he do? He told me to shut up," she said. He said, dead people don't need furniture, and you need to learn that money is more important than sentimental garbage." I closed my eyes. I felt a vein throbbing in my temple. Selling the furniture was one thing. Selling Sarah's piano was a desecration. It was an act of violence against our memory. "There is more," Maya said, her voice barely a whisper. I opened my eyes. "Tell me." Tonight at dinner, they were drinking wine, the expensive kind from your cellar, and they were talking about money. Dad said he couldn't get the credit card to work, but it didn't matter because he was going to sell the land in Florida next week. And then Mom looked at me. Maya shivered. She said, "Maya, we have some exciting news. We are going on a trip." "A trip?" I asked. "To the Maldives," she said, "for a whole month. Just the three of us. A celebration of our new freedom." "That doesn't sound so bad," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "But Grandpa," Maya said, gripping my hands tighter. I asked how we could afford it if the cards weren't working. And I asked about school. "I have finals next month." She took a ragged breath. "Mom said not to worry about school," she said. "St. Jude's is too expensive anyway. She said I am transferring to the public school district next semester. She said the tuition money is better spent on experiences for the family." The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed in the corner, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. They were stealing her education. I had set up a college fund. I paid the tuition for St. Jude's every year in full. It was $50,000. It was an investment in her future. And they were going to cash it out. They were going to take her out of the best school in the state so they could go sit on a beach in the Maldives and drink cocktails. They were cannibalizing their own daughter's future to feed their present greed. That was the line. They could take my money. They could take my car. They could even take my dignity. But they could not take her future. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I saw the yellow school bus waiting. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The time for games was over. This wasn't just about teaching a lesson anymore. This was a rescue mission. I turned back to Maya. "Maya, listen to me," I said. She looked up. She saw the change in my face. She didn't see a frail old man. She saw the CEO. She saw the grandfather who chased away the monsters under the bed. "I am not crazy," I said, my voice steady as steel. I didn't run away. "Your father and mother brought me here. They dumped me at the gate and stole my wallet. They left me here because they want my money." Maya gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "They did that," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "But they made a mistake. They didn't know that the man who owns this building is my best friend." I pointed to the ceiling. "I am not a prisoner here, Maya. I am a general in a bunker. I am watching them. I blocked the credit cards. I am the reason they couldn't buy pizza last night." A small smile flickered on Maya's face. "You did that?" she asked. "I did," I said. "And I am going to do a lot more. I am going to take it all back, Maya. The house, the money, the piano." I walked over and knelt in front of her again. I looked her deep in the eyes. "But I need help. I need a spy on the inside." Maya straightened up. She wiped her face. She looked at me with the fierce determination of her grandmother. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "I need you to go back to that house," I said. "I need you to pretend that you believe them. If they say I am crazy, you nod. If they say you are changing schools, you say, okay, don't fight them, don't make them suspicious." I reached into my pocket. Marcus had given me a tiny burner phone the size of a credit card. "Take this," I said, pressing it into her hand. "Hide it. Put it in your shoe. Put it in your teddy bear. Just don't let them find it. Text me everything I said. When they leave the house, who comes over, what they are talking about, and most importantly, where they keep the papers." "The papers?" she asked. "The documents Damon makes me sign," I said. He is going to come here soon. He is going to try to get my signature to sell the land. I need to know his schedule." Maya nodded. She slipped the tiny phone into her sock. "I can do that," she said. "I am sorry you have to go through this, baby girl," I said, stroking her hair. "Adults are supposed to protect children, not use them." "It is okay, Grandpa," she said. Her voice was stronger now. "I am not scared anymore, because I know you are here." The door opened. Marcus poked his head in. "Time is up, Harry," he said softly. "The bus is leaving in 5 minutes." I stood up. I pulled Maya into one last hug. "Go back there and be a soldier," I whispered. "This war won't last long. I promise. I promise." Maya pulled away. She smoothed her skirt. She fixed her hair. She took a deep breath and put on a mask of indifference. She looked 10 years older than she had 10 minutes ago. "Bye, Grandpa," she said. She walked out the door. She didn't look back. I watched her go. I turned to Marcus. "Did you hear that?" I asked. I heard Marcus said. His face was grim. "The piano, the school. They are monsters, Harry. They are not monsters," I said, walking back to the desk. "Monsters are scary. Monsters have power." I sat down at the computer. I opened a new file. "They are just parasites," I said. "And you don't fight parasites, you starve them." I looked at the screen. I pulled up the account for St. Jude's Academy. I saw the tuition refund request pending. It had been submitted this morning by Courtney Banks. I hit the deny button on the administrator portal. Then I flagged the account. "Do not process any changes without in-person biometric verification from Harrison Banks." "Not today, Courtney," I whispered. I looked at the picture of Sarah on the desk. "I am going to get your piano back, Sarah," I said to the photo. "And then I am going to play a requiem for our son's lifestyle." Marcus poured the scotch. "To Maya," he said. "To the spy on the inside," I replied. The real war had just begun, and now I had an army. Greed is a drug. I have seen it destroy better men than my son. I have seen it turn brilliant CEOs into gambling addicts and honest accountants into embezzlers. But the thing about greed is that it makes you blind. It creates a tunnel vision where the only thing you can see is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you completely miss the open manhole cover right in front of your feet. For 2 months, I had watched Damon from my command center. I watched him burn through the cash I had left in the checking account. I watched him max out the credit cards before I engaged the random decline protocol. He was bleeding money. The party lifestyle cost a fortune, and he had no income. Courtney was nagging him daily about the trip to the Maldives and the new car she wanted since the Porsche was repossessed. Desperation was setting in, and desperate men look for shortcuts. I saw it on his laptop screen via the spyware Marcus had installed. Damon wasn't looking for a job. He was looking at a website called Crypto Kingdom. It was a virtual real estate scheme. Buy a plot of digital land in the metaverse for $500,000 and sell it for $3 million in a month. It was a scam. A child could see it was a scam. But Damon didn't see a scam. He saw a lifeline. He saw a way to get rich quick without doing any actual work, which was his favorite kind of business plan. But he had a problem. He didn't have $500,000. He had about $400 and a half tank of gas. So he remembered the asset. I owned a commercial lot in downtown Atlanta, an old warehouse district that was being gentrified. It was worth $2 million easy. And because it was in my name, he couldn't touch it, unless he had a power of attorney. I saw him download the form. I saw him fill it out. General power of attorney, granting Damon Banks full rights to sell, convey, and liquidate real estate assets. He printed it out. Then he called Courtney. "I am going to see the old man," he told her. "He is mush by now. I will get him to scribble on the line and we are rich. He is mush." That is what he thought. I turned off the monitor. I looked at Marcus. "It is showtime," I said. Marcus nodded. He helped me set the stage. We messed up the bed sheets. We put a few empty pudding cups on the nightstand to make it look like I had lost my appetite. I took off my expensive watch and hid it. I put on a stained cardigan that belonged to a resident who had passed away last year. I messed up my hair so it stood up in tufts. I sat in the wheelchair by the window. I practiced the tremor. I had studied Parkinson's patients in the facility. I knew how to make my hands shake with a rhythmic, uncontrollable rattle. "I am ready," I whispered. Damon arrived 20 minutes later. I didn't turn around when the door opened. I stared out the window at the brick wall, muttering to myself. "Dad," Damon said. I waited a beat. I turned the wheelchair slowly. I looked at him. He looked terrible. He was wearing a suit, but it was wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept. He was holding a plastic bouquet of flowers wrapped in cellophane, the kind you buy at a gas station for $5. They were already wilting. "Who are you?" I asked, making my voice thin and reedy. "It is me, Dad," Damon said, forcing a smile. "It is Damon, your son." "Damon?" I repeated, rolling the word around in my mouth like a marble. "Damon, the boy with the bike. Did you fix the bike, son?" Damon rolled his eyes. "I saw it." He was impatient. "Yeah, Dad, I fixed the bike. Look, I brought you flowers." He tossed the flowers onto the unmade bed. He didn't put them in water. He didn't care. "How are you doing in here?" he asked, glancing around the room with disgust. "They treating you okay?" "The soup is cold," I whispered. "And the lady?" "The lady took my shoes." "Where is Sarah? Is Sarah coming?" Sarah was my wife, his mother. She had been dead for 5 years. Asking for her was a calculated move. It made him uncomfortable. It confirmed his bias that my brain was gone. She is waiting for us," Dad, Damon said, stepping closer. "That is why I am here. We need to fix some things so you can go see Mom." He pulled a folded paper out of his jacket pocket. "What is that?" I asked, shrinking back into the chair. "It is just a permission slip," Dad, Damon said. His voice took on that condescending tone people use with children. The city is fining us. Because of the old warehouse, they say it is a hazard. We need to sell it to pay the fines, or they are going to come and take you to jail." He used fear. He tried to scare a confused old man. It was despicable. "Jail," I whimpered, clutching my cardigan. "I don't want to go to jail. I am a good boy." "I know, Dad. I know," Damon said soothingly. "But if you sign this, I can fix it. I can sell the bad building and pay the bad men, and you will be safe." He uncapped a pen, an expensive Mont Blanc pen that he had stolen from my desk. "Here," he said, shoving the paper onto the tray table of the wheelchair. "Just sign right here at the bottom." He pointed to the line. I looked at the paper. It was a standard power of attorney. If I signed this legally, he could sell everything I owned. He could empty my accounts. He could leave me destitute for real. My hand started to shake. The tremor was violent. "I can't," I whispered. "My hand, it won't stop." "Just hold it steady," Damon snapped, losing his patience. "Come on, Dad. Focus." He grabbed my wrist. He forced my hand down to the paper. His grip was tight. He was hurting me. "Sign it," he hissed. I put the tip of the pen to the paper. I looked at him one last time. I looked into his eyes, searching for a shred of hesitation, a shred of guilt. There was nothing. Only the reflection of dollar signs. "Okay, son," I whispered. "I will sign." I moved the pen. Harrison Banks. That is my name. My signature is known in banks all over the world. It is a sweeping, elegant script with a sharp underline. But today, I didn't write Harrison Banks. I let the pen slide and jerk. I wrote a jagged, illegible scrawl. Harrison Banks. I missed the I. I missed the A. And the style was completely wrong. It looked like the scratching of a chicken. But more importantly, it looked nothing like the signature card on file with the county clerk. And I knew something Damon didn't know. The county clerk was a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She had been processing my real estate deals for 30 years. She was a stickler for details. If a T wasn't crossed, she rejected the document. I finished the scribble. "There," I wheezed, dropping the pen. "Is that okay?" Damon snatched the paper up. He didn't even look at the signature. He just saw ink on the line. He folded it and shoved it back into his pocket like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Perfect, Dad," he said. "You did good." He backed away toward the door. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. "Are you staying?" I asked. "Can we play checkers?" "I can't, Dad," Damon said, checking his watch. "I have business. Big business. I am going to make us rich." He was already rich. He just didn't know how to keep it. He opened the door. "Bye, Dad," he said. "Try not to drool on yourself." He walked out. I listened to his footsteps fading down the hall. I heard him whistling. He was happy. He thought he had just secured $500,000. I sat there for a moment. Then I stopped shaking. I sat up straight. I smoothed my hair. I picked up the wilting flowers and threw them in the trash can. I stood up and walked to the door. I locked it. Then I went to the hidden panel in the wall where Marcus had stashed a bottle of water. I took a long drink. My throat hurt from doing that raspy voice. I pulled out my burner phone. I texted Marcus. "The fish has taken the bait." Marcus texted back immediately. "Did he check the hook?" "No," I replied. "He swallowed it whole." I walked over to the computer and pulled up the surveillance feed of the parking lot. I saw Damon get into his rental car. He was on the phone, probably calling Courtney. "I got it, babe," he was probably saying. The old fool signed it. "We are going to the moon." I smiled. He was going to the moon all right. But he was going to find out that there is no oxygen up there. I opened the county records database. I flagged the property in question. I added a note to the digital file. Alert potential fraud. Verify all signatures against the 1990 master file. It was a small trap, a bureaucratic tripwire. When Damon walked into that title office tomorrow, he was going to hit a wall, and he was going to hit it hard. I went back to the bed and lay down. I was exhausted. Acting frail takes a lot of strength. But as I closed my eyes, I didn't see darkness. I saw the look on Damon's face when the lawyer tells him the paper is worthless. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered. I pulled the blanket up. Tomorrow was going to be a very entertaining day. The air conditioning in the high-rise law office of Henderson and Partners was set to a crisp 68 degrees, but my son Damon was sweating like a sinner in church. I was not there to see it in person, but thanks to the hidden camera Marcus had installed in the hallway of the nursing home and the play-by-play update I received later from Mr. Henderson himself, I can paint the picture for you with absolute clarity. Damon walked into that office wearing his best suit and his most arrogant smile. He was holding the power of attorney document in his sweaty hand like it was a royal decree. He thought he was walking in to collect a check for $2 million. He thought he was about to sell the commercial lot I had bought 20 years ago. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He sat down across from Mr. Henderson. Henderson is an old-school lawyer. He wears bow ties and reading glasses on a chain, and he has been reviewing my contracts since the 90s. He knows my signature better than he knows his own wife's handwriting. Damon slid the paper across the mahogany desk. "Here it is," he said, his voice oozing with false confidence. "The old man signed it yesterday. He is not doing well, you know, failing health. He wants to liquidate the asset to pay for his medical care. It is very sad, but necessary." Henderson picked up the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the document. He looked at the signature line. He frowned. He opened a file on his desk. He pulled out a deed I had signed 10 years ago. He placed the two documents side by side. On the left was my signature. Elegant, sharp, the H in Harrison swooping up like a hawk taking flight, the underline beneath Banks cutting through the paper with authority. On the right was the scribble Damon had forced me to write, a jagged, shaky mess that looked like a spider had dipped its legs in ink and died on the page. Henderson looked up. He didn't smile. "Mr. Banks," he said, "this is not your father's signature." Damon laughed nervously, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "What do you mean?" he stammered. "Of course it is. I was there." I held the pen for him. "He is sick, Mr. Henderson. He has tremors. Parkinson's, maybe." His hand shakes. "That is why it looks a little messy." Henderson shook his head slowly. "This is not just messy, son. This is unrecognizable. And more importantly, it is not notarized." "Notarized?" Damon asked, the color draining from his face. "Yes, notarized," Henderson said, sliding the paper back. "For a real estate transaction of this magnitude, especially involving a senior citizen with alleged health issues, we require a notarized signature. We need a witness. And frankly, looking at this chicken scratch, I would need a medical affidavit stating that he is competent to sign at all." Damon stood up. He slammed his hand on the desk. "I don't have time for this," he shouted. "The buyer is waiting. The medical bills are piling up. You are the family lawyer. Just push it through. Do it as a favor." "I do not do favors that land me in prison," Mr. Banks Henderson said coldly. "Come back with a notary and a signature that matches the file. Or don't come back at all." Damon grabbed the paper. He crumpled it in his fist. "You are making a mistake," he hissed. "I run the estate now." "Not with that piece of paper, you don't," Henderson said. "Good day, sir." Damon stormed out of the office. He rode the elevator down 40 floors, and with every floor his rage grew hotter. He wasn't worried about my health. He wasn't worried about the law. He was worried about the deadline. The buy-in for the crypto scheme closed at 5 o'clock. It was now 2:30. He needed that money today. He got into his rental car and drove back to Silver Horizon. He didn't drive carefully. He drove like a maniac, weaving through traffic, honking at grandmothers, screaming obscenities at the windshield. Back at the nursing home, I was sitting in my wheelchair by the window. I had changed back into the stained cardigan. I had put the empty pudding cup back on the tray. I was reading a book, but when I saw his car screech into the parking lot, I hid the book under the mattress. I slumped over. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I started the tremor in my hand. I was ready. I heard his footsteps in the hallway. They weren't the hesitant steps of a visitor. They were the stomping boots of an invader. He didn't knock. He kicked the door open. It banged against the wall with a violence that shook the room. "You useless old fool," he screamed. He marched across the room and threw the crumpled paper at me. It hit me in the chest and fell into my lap. "Look at this!" he yelled, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "Look at what you did!" I looked up at him slowly, blinking my eyes like a confused owl. "Damon," I whispered, my voice trembling, "you came back. Did you bring the ice cream?" "Shut up about the ice cream," he roared. He grabbed the lapels of my cardigan and shook me. My head rattled. It wasn't acting. He was actually hurting me. "You ruined it," he screamed. "You signed it wrong on purpose, didn't you, you old snake? You made it look like a scribble so the lawyer would reject it." I pulled away from him, cowering in the chair. "I didn't," I whimpered. "My hand. Damon, my hand won't stop shaking. I tried to be a good boy." "You are a liar," he spat. He paced the small room like a caged tiger. He kicked the nightstand, sending the plastic water pitcher flying. It cracked against the wall. Water splashed everywhere, soaking the carpet. "I need that money," he yelled. "I need it today. And because you can't hold a pen straight, I missed the window. Do you know how much money I just lost? Millions. I lost millions because of your shaky hand." He turned on me, his eyes wild and bloodshot. "You think this is a game?" he hissed, leaning down until his face was inches from mine. "You think you are safe in here? You think because I pay the bills you can sit here and relax while I do all the work?" He laughed, a cruel sound. "Well, guess what, Dad? The free ride is over." He poked me hard in the chest. "If you don't sign this paper correctly tomorrow, if you don't get a notary in here and make it legal, I am cutting you off." I looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Cutting me off?" I asked. "I mean, no more money," he said. "I control the accounts, remember. I control the pension. I control the savings. If I don't pay the bill for this place, they throw you out on the street." He stood up straight, adjusting his suit jacket. "And I won't just stop paying the rent," he continued. "I will stop paying for your meds, that heart medication you take, the arthritis pills. Expensive stuff, Dad. $500 a month. Maybe I just stop buying it. Let's see how much your hand shakes when your heart stops beating properly." I gasped. It was a theatrical gasp, but the horror I felt was real. He was threatening my life. He was threatening to kill me by negligence to save money he was stealing from me. "You wouldn't," I whispered. "I am your father. I am your boss." "Now," he sneered, "you are just an expense, a line item on a spreadsheet. And if the asset doesn't perform, you liquidate it, or you stop maintaining it." He walked to the door. He turned back one last time. "I am coming back tomorrow at 9 a.m., he said. "I am bringing a notary, and I am bringing a doctor to certify you are sane enough to sign. You better drink some coffee. You better steady that hand. Because if that lawyer rejects me one more time, I swear to God I will leave you here to rot without a single pill to kill the pain. Do you understand me?" he screamed. I nodded slowly, clutching the crumpled paper to my chest. "Yes, son," I whispered. "I understand." "Good," he said. He slammed the door shut. I sat there in the silence. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from a cold, calculated fury. I listened to his footsteps fade away. I listened to the sound of his car engine roaring to life and speeding away. Then I stopped shaking. I sat up straight. I brushed the imaginary dust off my cardigan. I looked at the water dripping down the wall where the pitcher had smashed. "You threatened to kill me, Damon," I said to the empty room. You threatened to withhold medical care from a dependent adult. That is a felony. In the state of Georgia, that is aggravated elder abuse. Mandatory minimum sentence is 5 years. The closet door opened. Marcus stepped out. He was holding a small digital recorder. The red light was still blinking. He looked pale. Even Marcus, who had seen war, who had seen the worst of humanity, looked shaken. "I got it," he said quietly. Every word. The threat about the meds, the threat about the eviction. It is all here, Harry, clear as a bell. He walked over and poured me a glass of water from the hidden fridge. His hand was shaking slightly as he handed it to me. "He is a monster," Harry Marcus said. I knew he was spoiled. I didn't know he was homicidal. "We should call the police now. This is enough to put him away tonight." I took the water. I drank it slowly, letting the cool liquid soothe my throat. "Not yet," I said. Marcus looked at me incredulous. "Not yet. Harry, he threatened your life. He threatened a version of me that doesn't exist," I said. "He threatened a helpless old man, but that man isn't here." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky. "He is desperate, Marcus," I said. "He is cornered. Today he hit a wall. Tomorrow he brings a notary. That means he is doubling down." I turned back to Marcus. "I want him to bring the notary," I said. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because when he walks in here tomorrow with a witness, I want that witness to see everything I said. I want a legal record of his attempt to defraud me, and then—" I smiled a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "And then I am going to introduce him to the real owner of Silver Horizon." Marcus looked at the recorder in his hand. "You want to trap him in front of an audience?" Marcus asked. "I want to destroy him in front of an audience," I corrected. "He thinks I am an expense," I said, walking back to the computer terminal. "He thinks I am a line item. Well, tomorrow he's going to find out that I am the auditor. And the books don't balance." I sat down at the keyboard. I logged into the pharmacy portal. I ordered a rush delivery of my medication just to be safe, paid for by the company account he couldn't touch. Then I logged into the building security system. I flagged Damon's car. "Alert security," I typed. "Visitor Damon Banks. Do not stop at gate. Allow entry. Direct to administration office. Do not intervene until signal is given." I looked at Marcus. "Is the conference room ready?" I asked. "It is ready," Marcus said. "Cameras are rolling." "Good," I said. I looked down at the crumpled power of attorney form still in my hand. I smoothed it out on the desk. "He wants a signature," I whispered. I picked up a red marker. I drew a big X across the page. "He is going to get a signature," I said, "but it won't be on a check. It will be on a restraining order." "Get some rest, Marcus," I said. "We have a big day tomorrow." Marcus nodded and left the room. I sat alone in the dim light. I replayed the sound of my son's voice in my head. "I will stop paying for your meds." I felt a tear run down my cheek. It was the last tear I would ever shed for Damon Banks. "You broke the covenant, son," I whispered. "A father protects his child, but a child must honor his father. You broke the bond, and now you pay the price." Hypocrisy has a flavor. It tastes like cheap champagne served in expensive crystal. It tastes like a lie coated in buttercream frosting. I sat in the command center at Silver Horizon watching the monitors, and I could practically taste the hypocrisy radiating from my own home. It was Saturday night, 3 days since Damon had threatened to kill me, 2 days since the bank card incident, and tonight was the grand finale of their delusion. Courtney had decided to throw a 10th wedding anniversary party. It was not just a party, it was a coronation. She had invited half of Atlanta's social elite. She had invited the local press. She had hired a string quartet. She had turned my front lawn into a gala event. And the theme of the night wasn't love, it was martyrdom. I watched on the high-definition screen as Courtney worked the room. She was wearing a white silk gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. She was holding a glass of vintage Krug champagne, my champagne, and she was talking to a reporter from the Atlanta Chronicles. I turned up the volume. "It has been so hard," Courtney said, dabbing at a dry eye with a cocktail napkin. "Caring for Harrison is a full-time job. He is gone mentally. We have to watch him 24/7. That is why he isn't here tonight. We have him resting in a specialized facility just for the weekend so we can have one night of peace." The reporter nodded sympathetically, scribbling in her notebook. "You are a saint, Mrs. Banks," the reporter said. "Most children would just put him in a home and forget about him." Courtney sighed a tragic, heroic sigh. "We could never do that," she lied. "Family is everything. We sacrificed our careers to take care of him. Damon is exhausted, but we do it for love." I let out a low, dark laugh. Love. She did it for the house, she did it for the status, and she did it for the car, parked right in the center of the circular driveway. It was a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, bright green. It cost $250,000. Damon had bought it 4 days ago using a wire transfer from my private pension fund. He had forged the authorization before I locked the accounts. It was the last big purchase he managed to sneak through. He had parked it right by the front door under a spotlight. He wanted everyone to see it. He wanted them to know he had arrived. Damon was standing next to the car holding court. He was telling a group of men about his investment strategies. Crypto, he was saying, swirling his scotch. It is the future. I cashed out some old boring stocks my dad was sitting on and moved it into the future. That is how I bought this beauty. Cash. I looked at Marcus, who was sitting next to me eating a sandwich. "Is the team in position?" I asked. Marcus swallowed and nodded. "They are waiting at the end of the service road. Just give the signal, Harry." I looked back at the screen. "Not yet," I said. "Let them make the toast. Let them climb all the way to the top of the ladder before we kick it over." The party was in full swing. The string quartet was playing Vivaldi. Waiters were passing around trays of caviar. It was a disgusting display of wealth built on the back of a crime. Then Courtney clinked her spoon against her glass. Ting, ting, ting. The crowd quieted down. "Damon, come here, baby," Courtney called out. Damon walked up the steps to the porch. He put his arm around her. They looked like the perfect couple, the king and queen of lies. Courtney raised her glass. 10 years, she said, beaming at the crowd. 10 years of love. 10 years of building a life together. And now finally we are stepping into our true potential. She looked at the Porsche. "This year has been hard," she said. "Dealing with Harrison's decline has been tragic, but it has brought us closer, and it has blessed us with the resources to finally live the life we deserve. To Damon, my rock, my provider." To Damon, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Damon smiled. He puffed out his chest. He looked at the car. He looked at the house. He looked like a man who thought he had gotten away with murder. "Now," I said. Marcus pressed a button on his phone. "Send them in." At first, nobody noticed. The music was playing. The laughter was loud. Then the sound cut through the night air. It was the beep, beep, beep of a heavy truck backing up. The guests turned around. A massive flatbed tow truck emblazoned with the logo Asset Recovery Solutions was backing up my driveway. It wasn't being subtle. It was crushing the manicured azaleas Courtney loved. It was blocking the exit. The flashing yellow lights of the truck washed over the party, turning the elegant white dress into a sickly shade of amber. Damon froze. His smile dropped. "What is that?" he shouted. "Who is that?" "Hey, you can't park there." 2 men jumped out of the truck. They weren't valets. They were big men wearing tactical vests and carrying clipboards. One of them walked straight up the driveway, ignoring the guests, ignoring the waiters. He walked right up to the Porsche. Damon ran down the steps. "Hey, get away from the car," Damon yelled. "This is a private party. Get that truck out of here." The repo man didn't stop. He looked at the VIN number on the dashboard of the Porsche. He checked his clipboard. "VIN ending in 498, he said loudly. "This is the vehicle." He waved to the truck driver. "Hook it up," he yelled. Damon lunged at the man. "Are you deaf?" Damon screamed. "I said get away. I own this car. I bought it cash 3 days ago." The repo man turned to face him. He didn't look intimidated. He looked bored. "Are you Damon Banks?" he asked. "Yes, I am. Damon Banks," Damon shouted. "And I am going to sue you for trespassing." The repo man handed him a piece of paper. It was red. "Mr. Banks, I am an agent of the State Financial Crimes Division acting on a seizure warrant. This vehicle was purchased with funds flagged as stolen from the Harrison Banks Pension Trust." The music stopped. The string quartet lowered their bows. The guests went silent. The reporter from the Atlanta Chronicle stepped closer, holding her recording device high in the air. Stolen. Damon stammered. His face went pale. No, that is my father's money. I have power of attorney. The repo man shook his head. The bank flagged the transfer as fraudulent, sir. The account holder, Harrison Banks, has declared that he did not authorize this purchase. This is now evidence in an active investigation into wire fraud and elder financial abuse. The words hung in the air like smoke. Wire fraud, elder abuse. Courtney ran down the steps. She grabbed Damon's arm. Tell him, Damon, she hissed, her voice shrill with panic. Tell him it is a mistake. Show him the papers. I don't have the papers on me, Damon whispered. The repo man signaled the driver again. Take it away. The driver lowered the lift. He hooked chains to the axle of the pristine green Porsche. The metal clanking against metal sounded like gunshots in the quiet night. The winch whined. The car lifted into the air. The tires spun helplessly. My car, Damon cried, reaching out as if he could grab it. That is my car. Sir, step back or I will have you detained for obstruction, the repo man warned. Damon stepped back. He looked around. The guests were staring. These were the people he had tried to impress, the people he had lied to. They weren't toasting him anymore. They were whispering. Did he say stolen elder abuse? I thought he said he made money in crypto. The reporter stepped forward. She thrust her microphone into Courtney's face. Mrs. Banks, you just said you were sacrificing everything to care for Harrison. Did you use his pension fund to buy a sports car? Courtney recoiled like she had been slapped. No comment, she shrieked. Get that camera away from me. This is a misunderstanding. My husband handles the finances. She threw Damon under the bus in less than a second. The truck engine roared. The Porsche secured on the flatbed began to move. It rolled down the driveway past the shocked guests, past the fountain, past the gate. Damon stood alone on the gravel. The spotlight that had been illuminating the car was now shining on nothing but empty pavement and a puddle of oil. He looked small. He looked pathetic. The guests started to leave. It wasn't a slow exit. It was an evacuation. Nobody wanted to be associated with a crime scene. I think we should go. Yeah, this is awkward. I knew they were fakes. I watched from the command center. I watched the cars line up to leave. I watched the reporter interviewing a guest by the gate. I watched Courtney turn on Damon. She started hitting his chest with her fists. You idiot, she screamed, her voice carrying clearly over the security feed. You said it was clean. You said the old man was too senile to notice. Shut up, Courtney, Damon hissed, looking around at the departing guests. Not here. You humiliated me, she yelled, in front of the press, in front of everyone. They took the Porsche, Damon. They took my status symbol. It is a mistake, Damon pleaded. I will fix it. I will go to the bank on Monday. You can't fix this, Courtney spat. She turned and ran back into the house, slamming the heavy front door. Damon stood there. The party was over. The lawn was littered with abandoned champagne glasses and half-eaten caviar. The string quartet was packing up their instruments, shaking their heads. Damon looked at the spot where the car had been. He looked at his hands. He looked up at the sky. Why, he whispered. Why is this happening? I took a sip of my scotch. Because you stole it, son, I said to the screen. Because you didn't earn it. Marcus turned to me. That was brutal, Harry, he said. The reporter got everything. It will be on the morning news. Good, I said. But the fraud investigation, Marcus asked. Won't that blow your cover? No, I said. I filed the report anonymously through the bank's fraud hotline using my voice ID. They don't know where I am. They just know the money was moved without permission. I watched Damon kick a champagne glass. It shattered. He walked up the steps slowly. He looked like an old man. He is going to call me tomorrow, I said. He thinks you are in a coma, practically, Marcus said. He is going to call to scream at me, I said. He needs someone to blame. He can't blame himself, so he will blame the ghost. I leaned back in the chair. Let him call. I have a few more surprises for him. The Porsche was just a toy. Wait until he finds out about the house. I looked at the empty driveway one last time. Happy anniversary, kids, I whispered. I closed the laptop. End of part 7. The silence in a house after a party ends badly is heavier than lead. It presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I sat in the command center at Silver Horizon watching the aftermath of the Porsche repossession on the security monitors. The guests were gone. The caterers had packed up their trucks and fled the awkwardness, leaving half-eaten trays of crab cakes on the counters. The driveway was empty, save for the oil stain where the green sports car had been parked. But inside the house, the noise was just beginning. I turned up the volume on the living room feed. Courtney was pacing back and forth, still wearing her white gown, which now looked ridiculous, like a costume from a play that had been canceled mid-performance. She was holding a bottle of wine by the neck, not bothering with a glass. Damon sat on the cheap modern sofa, his head in his hands. He looked like a man who had been punched in the gut. "You are useless," Courtney spat. Her voice was slurred, but the venom was clear. "I invited the editor of Vogue, Damon. I invited the mayor's wife. And you let a tow truck driver humiliate us. It was a mistake," Damon mumbled into his hands. "The bank made a mistake. I will fix it on Monday." "Monday?" Courtney laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. "There is no Monday, Damon. Do you think those people are coming back? Do you think the reporter is going to kill that story? We are going to be the laughing stock of Atlanta by breakfast." She threw a throw pillow at him. It hit him in the shoulder, but he didn't move. "My mother was right about you," she hissed. "She said you were a coattail rider. She said you were nothing without Harrison. And look at you. The moment your daddy is gone, you fall apart. You can't even buy a car without screwing it up." Damon stood up. His face was flushed with rage and humiliation. "I bought that car," he shouted. "I found the money. I moved the assets. I did what I had to do." "You stole it," Courtney screamed back. "That is what the man said. Stolen funds. You are not a businessman, Damon. You are a thief, and you are a bad one at that because you got caught." She took a long swig from the bottle. "I wanted a provider," she said, her voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "I wanted a king. Instead, I got a jester." She turned and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Damon asked, his voice cracking. "To the guest room," she said. "I can't sleep in the same bed as a failure. It might be contagious." She climbed the stairs. I heard the bedroom door slam. Then I heard the lock turn. Damon was alone. He stood in the middle of the living room, the room I had designed, the room where I had raised him. He looked around as if the walls were closing in on him. He was trapped. He had no wife. He had no car. He had no access to the bank, and he had a crushing sense of inadequacy that was eating him alive. He walked over to my liquor cabinet. He bypassed the wine. He reached for the heavy crystal decanter of bourbon. My bourbon. Pappy Van Winkle, 23 years old. A bottle I saved for special occasions. He didn't pour a glass. He drank straight from the decanter. Amber liquid spilled down his chin onto his ruined shirt. He wiped it away with the back of his hand. He paced the room. He was muttering to himself. "It is the old man," he whispered. "It has to be. The fraud alert. The signature. He is doing this." He stopped. He looked at the phone on the side table, the landline. He grabbed it. I watched him dial. I knew the number he was punching in. It was the number for Silver Horizon. In the command center, the red phone on Marcus's desk began to ring. It was a shrill sound in the quiet office. Marcus looked up from his book. He looked at the clock. It was past midnight. "He is calling Harry," Marcus said. "Do you want me to answer?" "No," I said. I wheeled my chair over to the desk. I stared at the phone. "Let it ring," I said. "Let him sweat. Ring, ring, ring." On the monitor, I saw Damon getting angrier. He was slamming his hand against the wall with every ring. "Pick up!" he screamed at the empty room. "Pick up, you useless nurse!" Finally, on the 10th ring, I reached out. I picked up the receiver. I didn't say anything. I just held it to my ear and breathed. "Hello," Damon shouted. "Who is this? Put my father on. Put Harrison Banks on the phone right now." I stayed silent. I let the silence stretch out over the line, a void waiting to be filled. "I know you are there," Dad, Damon hissed. His voice was thick with alcohol and hate. "I know you can hear me. You think you are funny, don't you? You think you are clever." He took another drink. I could hear the gulping sound. "You flagged the car," he said. "Somehow you flagged the car. You acted like a vegetable yesterday, but you are still pulling strings. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter." He started to laugh. It was a broken, ugly sound. "I am going to sell the house," he said. "I am going to sell it all. The land, the jewelry, Mom's pearls, everything. I am going to burn your legacy to the ground just to keep warm. and you are going to rot in that cell while I do it." He paused, breathing heavily. "Say something," he screamed. "Say something, you old coward." I looked at the computer screen. I had a file ready. It wasn't my voice. Speaking would break the illusion. Speaking would give him a target. I needed to give him a mirror. I clicked on the audio file I had extracted from the home security system 3 days ago. It was recorded in the living room the day the movers came to take the piano. I held the phone up to the computer speaker. I pressed play. A child's voice filled the line, high and terrified. "Daddy, please, no. It was Maya. That is Grandma's piano." Maya's voice sobbed on the recording. "You promised I could keep it. Grandpa gave it to me. Please, Daddy, don't let them take it." Then Damon's voice from the recording, cold and dismissive. "Get out of the way, Maya. It is just wood and wire. We need the cash." "But I love it," Maya screamed. "I hate you. I hate you for doing this to Grandpa." "Shut up," the recorded Damon shouted. "Go to your room before I sell your iPad too." The sound of a door slamming. Then silence. I stopped the recording. I put the phone back to my ear. On the other end of the line there was absolute silence. Damon had stopped breathing. In the living room on the monitor I saw him lower the phone slowly. His face had gone pale. The flush of alcohol had drained away, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He looked around the room. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the smoke detectors. He looked at the security sensors in the corners. How he whispered, "How did you get that?" That conversation had happened inside the house. No police report, no public record, just a private moment of cruelty between a father and daughter. And now his father was playing it back to him at midnight. "Who is this?" Damon whispered, his voice trembling. "Dad, is that you?" I didn't answer. I just breathed, a slow, steady rhythm. Damon backed away from the phone base. He looked terrified. He wasn't dealing with a senile old man anymore. He was dealing with a ghost that could see through walls, a ghost that kept receipts. "Stop it," he whimpered. "Stop watching me." He slammed the receiver down onto the cradle. He missed the first time, fumbling with shaking hands before finally cutting the connection. The line went dead. I hung up the phone in the command center. I looked at the monitor. Damon was standing in the middle of the room, spinning in circles. He was checking the windows. He was pulling the curtains shut. He ran to the smart speaker on the counter and ripped the cord out of the wall. He was paranoid. Good. Paranoia creates mistakes. Paranoia makes you sloppy. Marcus looked at me. He had goosebumps on his arms. "That was haunting, Harry," he said, using his own daughter's voice against him. "It wasn't a weapon, Marcus," I said, staring at the screen where Damon was now huddled on the floor, clutching the whiskey bottle. It was a reminder. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds of the nursing home. "He forgot who he was," I said. "He forgot he was a father. He forgot he was a son. He thought he could act in the dark and nobody would see." I turned back to the screen. "I just turned the lights on," I said. Damon took another drink. He passed out on the rug, curled into a ball. He looked small. He looked defeated. But I knew the fight wasn't over. A cornered animal is dangerous. And tomorrow he would wake up with a hangover and a desperate need for cash. He would try something bold. He would try something reckless. And I would be waiting. "Sleep tight, son," I whispered. "The nightmare is just beginning. A trap needs bait, and the best bait for a predator is the smell of blood." For 3 days I had played the role of the ghost, haunting their bank accounts and watching their lives unravel from a distance, but ghosts are easy to ignore if you drink enough whiskey. To finish this, I needed to become flesh and blood again. I needed to become a corpse, or at least a dying man with a very large estate and a very shaky signature. It was Sunday evening. The rain had returned, turning the world outside the nursing home into a blurred watercolor of gray and black. Inside the command center, Marcus and I were setting the stage for the final act. We had moved operations from his office back to room 104, but this time room 104 looked different. We had brought in medical equipment, a heart rate monitor that beeped with a slow, rhythmic cadence, an oxygen tank that hissed softly, an IV stand with a bag of saline that looked like morphine. I lay in the bed wearing a hospital gown that felt thin against my skin. I had removed my dentures. I know it sounds vain, but nothing makes a man look older and more vulnerable than a sunken jaw. I had dusted my face with a little bit of gray powder from a makeup kit Marcus's wife used for community theater. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see Harrison Banks, the CEO. I saw a shell. I saw a man taking his last breaths. "Are you ready?" Harry Marcus asked. He was wearing his white lab coat and a stethoscope around his neck. He looked grim. He hated this. He hated seeing his friend like this, even if it was just a performance. "Make the call," I whispered. My voice was already in character, raspy, weak. Marcus picked up the phone. He dialed Damon's number. I watched the monitor on the wall. The camera inside my house showed Damon sitting on the floor of the living room surrounded by empty takeout boxes. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn to the party. He looked like a wreck. Courtney was sitting on the stairs, scrolling through her phone, probably looking for a divorce lawyer or a pawn shop. The phone rang. Damon looked at it. He saw the caller ID. Silver Horizon. He hesitated. He was afraid. He was afraid it was me again playing the voice of his daughter. But then he answered. What he barked. Mr. Banks Marcus said, his voice grave and professional. "This is Dr. Sterling from Silver Horizon. I am afraid I have bad news." Damon sat up straighter. "What kind of bad news?" "Your father had a massive cardiac event 20 minutes ago," Marcus said. "His heart is failing. We have him on life support, but the prognosis is poor. I don't think he will make it through the night." I watched Damon's face. A normal son would cry. A normal son would drop the phone. A normal son would feel the earth shatter beneath his feet. Damon didn't cry. His eyes widened. A slow, creepy smile spread across his face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated relief. "Is he conscious?" Damon asked. "Barely," Marcus said. "He is drifting in and out. He keeps asking for you. He keeps muttering about a will." That was the trigger word. Will. Damon scrambled to his feet. "We are coming," he said. "Keep him alive until we get there. Do not let him die before I get there. Do you understand?" "Hurry," Marcus said. Click. Damon turned to Courtney. "Babe," he shouted. "Babe, get up. It is happening. The old man is checking out." Courtney looked up from her phone. "Is he dead?" "Not yet," Damon said, grabbing his keys. "But he is dying, and he is asking about the will." Courtney jumped up. The fatigue vanished from her face. "Call Thorne," she said. "Call that lawyer you met at the club. The shady one. Tell him to meet us there with a fresh draft. If Harrison is delirious, we can get him to sign everything over. We can cut out the charity. We can cut out the trust." "We take it all," Damon said. They ran out of the house. They didn't look like grieving children. They looked like investors arriving for a hostile takeover. I lay back on the pillows. "They are coming," I said to Marcus. "Let them come," Marcus said. "The police are waiting in the break room. The lawyer Henderson is waiting in my office." I closed my eyes. I focused on my breathing. Shallow. Rattling. I needed to be convincing. I needed them to believe that I was helpless so they would show their true faces one last time. 40 minutes later, I heard the commotion in the hallway. They didn't walk quietly. They marched. I heard the click-clack of Courtney's heels on the linoleum. I heard Damon's heavy footsteps, and I heard a third set of steps. Fast, nervous shuffling. That would be Thorne the lawyer they had dug up from the bottom of the barrel. They stopped right outside my door. I lay perfectly still. The heart monitor beeped. Beep, beep, beep. They thought I was unconscious. They thought the door was thick enough to hide their voices. But nursing home doors are thin, and greed is loud. "God, it smells like death in here," Courtney whispered. Her voice was full of disgust. "I hate this place. It is so depressing." "Don't worry about the smell," Damon whispered back. "Focus on the potential. Look at this building, Courtney. It is massive. Solid brick. Good bones." "So what?" Courtney snapped. So Damon said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "When the old man kicks the bucket, we inherit everything. That includes his assets. I bet he bought this place. I bet that is why he wanted to come here. He owns it." "You think?" Courtney asked, her tone changing instantly from disgust to intrigue. "I know he does," Damon said. "He always invests in real estate. We kick all these old people out, we gut the rooms, we knock down these walls, we can turn this into a boutique hotel or a luxury spa, the Silver Horizon Resort. I like that," Courtney purred. "We can put a pool in the back, get rid of that awful garden, and we will need to fumigate. Get rid of the old person's smell." "Exactly," Damon said. "But first we need the signature." "Is the paper ready, Thorne?" A new voice spoke up. Greasy. Nervous. "I have it, Mr. Banks," the lawyer said. "Last will and testament revoking all previous wills. It leaves 100% of the estate to Damon and Courtney Banks. I even added a clause about the granddaughter." "What clause?" Courtney asked. "Custody," Damon said. We keep full control of Maya's trust fund until she is 25. We can manage it for her. You know. Administrative fees, smart, Courtney said. Very smart. Okay, let's do this. Hold your breath, honey. We are going in. I lay there, and my heart actually skipped a beat. Not from illness, but from pure horror. They were planning to evict 100 elderly people. They were planning to steal my granddaughter's future. They were planning to desecrate the very place that was giving them shelter from the storm they had created. They were not just bad children. They were bad human beings. The door handle turned. The door creaked open. Marcus was standing by the bed checking the IV bag. He looked up. Family only, he whispered sternly. Who is this? He pointed at the lawyer. He is a family friend. Damon lied, stepping into the room. He is here for spiritual support. He looks like a lawyer, Marcus said. He is a priest. Courtney lied smoothly. A legal priest. Just let us have a moment with him, doctor. Please. It is time to say goodbye. Marcus looked at me. He saw my eyelids flutter. Make it quick, Marcus said. He is fading. Marcus stepped back into the shadows of the room, but he didn't leave. He stood near the curtain where the camera angle was best. Damon approached the bed. He looked down at me. I opened my eyes just a slit. I saw him. He was sweating. He looked eager. He looked like a vulture that had finally found the carcass. Dad, he whispered. Dad, can you hear me? I let out a low moan. I moved my head slightly. Damon, I rasped. Is that you? Yeah, Dad, it is me, he said. I am here. Courtney is here. The light, I whispered. I see the light. Don't go into the light yet, Damon said urgently. Not yet, Dad. We need to take care of you. We need to make sure your legacy is safe. He snapped his fingers at the lawyer. Thorne stepped forward and placed a clipboard on my chest. It felt heavy, like a tombstone. What is this? I wheezed. It is a prayer, Damon said. A prayer for your soul. And for the family. Just sign it, Dad. Just sign it so you can go to heaven in peace. He put a pen in my hand. He wrapped my cold fingers around it. Right here, he said, guiding my hand to the line. Just make your mark. Harrison Banks. Do it for me, Dad. Do it for your son. I looked at Courtney. She was standing at the foot of the bed. She wasn't crying. She was watching the pen with the intensity of a hawk. I looked at the lawyer. He was looking at his watch. I looked at Damon. I let my hand tremble. I let the pen hover over the paper. I love you, son, I whispered. I know, Dad, Damon said. I love you too. Now sign. He didn't love me. He loved the ink. I took a deep breath. A real breath. Deep and strong. I stopped shaking. I gripped the pen, not with the weak grip of a dying man, but with the iron grip of the man who built a logistics empire. I sat up. I didn't struggle. I didn't groan. I sat straight up in the bed like a corpse rising from the grave. Damon jumped back. Dad, he stammered. I looked him dead in the eye. You want a signature? I said, my voice booming in the small room. I will give you a signature. I grabbed the clipboard. I didn't sign the will. I wrote one word in big, bold letters across the entire page. Fraud. I threw the clipboard at him. It hit him in the chest and clattered to the floor. What the hell, Courtney screamed. Marcus stepped out of the shadows. He reached up and flipped a switch on the wall. The overhead lights flooded the room. The dim, romantic lighting of a deathbed scene vanished, replaced by the harsh, unforgiving glare of fluorescent tubes. I ripped the IV tape off my arm. It wasn't attached to a vein. It was taped to my skin. I pulled the oxygen tube from my nose. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. You are not dying, Damon whispered, his face going white as a sheet. I am not even sick, I said, standing up. I walked toward him. He backed away until he hit the wall. But you, I said, pointing a finger at his chest, you are in very critical condition. The door to the bathroom opened. 2 uniformed police officers stepped out. Behind them was Mr. Henderson, my real lawyer, holding a stack of files. Damon Banks, the officer said. Courtney Banks. Philip Thorne. You are all under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted elder abuse, and forgery. Damon looked at the police. He looked at me. He looked at the clipboard on the floor. "This is a trap," he screamed. "This is entrapment." "No, son," I said, buttoning the top button of my hospital gown like it was a tuxedo. "This is a performance review. And you just failed. Darkness is a liar. It makes you think you are hidden. It makes you think that your sins are invisible just because the sun isn't shining on them." My son Damon and his wife Courtney walked into room 104 thinking the darkness was their ally. They thought the shadows in the corners were empty. They thought the steady beep of the heart monitor was the countdown to their payday. They didn't know that darkness is also where the predator waits for the prey. I lay on the bed perfectly still. I had pulled the thin hospital sheet up to my chin, concealing my body. My eyes were closed, but my other senses were dialed up to 11. I smelled Courtney's perfume. It was too strong. A floral scent that tried to mask the stench of her greed. I smelled Damon's sweat, acrid and sour. The smell of a man who knows he is committing a crime but is too desperate to stop. The room was pitch black except for the green rhythmic line of the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It cast a ghostly glow on their faces as they approached the bed. "Is he out?" Courtney whispered. Her voice was harsh, slicing through the quiet. "He looks out," Damon whispered back. "Look at him. He is pale." "The doctor said he was fading," good Courtney said. "Let's get this over with. Where is the ink pad?" I heard the rustle of plastic. The lawyer Thorne was fumbling in his briefcase. His hands were shaking. Even he, a man with no morals, knew that this was a line you don't cross. Forging a signature is one thing. Physically forcing a dying man to fingerprint a will is another. "I have it," Thorne stammered. "I have the pad. But are you sure about this, Mr. Banks? If he is unconscious, he cannot legally consent." "Shut up and give it to me," Courtney snapped. She snatched the ink pad from him. She walked to the side of the bed. I felt her presence looming over me. She didn't touch my forehead to check for a fever. She didn't take my hand to offer comfort. She grabbed my right wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. Her grip was cold and businesslike. "Damon, hold the flashlight," she ordered. "Shine it on the paper. I need to see where to press his thumb." Damon pulled out his phone. The harsh LED light cut through the dark, illuminating the clipboard resting on my chest. "Hurry up," Damon said, his voice trembling. "The nurse might come back." Courtney uncapped the ink pad. She jammed my thumb onto the wet sponge. I felt the cold ink coating my skin. It felt like sludge. It felt like dirt. "Okay," she muttered. "Now the paper." She lifted my hand. She positioned it over the signature line of the last will and testament, the document that would strip my granddaughter of her future and hand my empire over to these vultures. "Just press it down," Courtney hissed. "Press it hard so it doesn't smudge." She pushed my thumb down. That was the moment. The moment a father realizes his son is truly gone. The moment the last thread of hope snaps. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were robbing the corpse while the heart was still beating. I didn't let my thumb hit the paper. My hand, which had been limp a second ago, turned into a vice. I gripped Courtney's wrist. I squeezed with the strength of a man who had lifted crates on the docks of Baltimore for 10 years before he ever sat in a boardroom. I squeezed until I felt the bones in her wrist grind together. Courtney gasped. "What the? Let go!" she shrieked. "Damon, he is grabbing me!" Damon dropped the phone. The light skittered across the floor. "Dad, let go." Damon yelled, reaching for my arm. "He is convulsing. He is having a seizure." "I am not having a seizure," I said. My voice didn't rattle. It didn't wheeze. It boomed. It was the voice that had commanded shareholder meetings. It was the voice of Harrison Banks. "Get your hands off me." I threw Courtney's hand away. She stumbled back, hitting the medical cart. The tray of instruments clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. I sat up. I grabbed the sheet that was covering me and ripped it away. I wasn't wearing a hospital gown. I wasn't wearing pajamas. I was wearing a charcoal gray three-piece suit. My silk tie was knotted perfectly. My pocket square was crisp and white. My gold cufflinks caught the green light of the monitor. Damon froze. His mouth hung open. He looked at the suit. He looked at my face. He couldn't process the image. "Dad," he whispered. Why are you dressed?" I reached out and clapped my hands once, sharp and loud. Lights I commanded. The room flooded with blinding white light. Damon and Courtney flinched, shielding their eyes. The lawyer Thorne dropped his briefcase and backed into the corner, looking like a rat searching for a hole. When their eyes adjusted, they realized we weren't alone. The bathroom door was open. The closet door was open. Standing by the window was Marcus Sterling. He wasn't wearing a doctor's coat anymore. He was wearing his suit, arms crossed, looking at them with pure disgust. Standing by the door was Sheriff Patterson, a man I had donated to for 20 years. His hand was resting on his belt near his handcuffs. And sitting in the chair in the corner holding a notepad was Henderson, my real lawyer. The room was silent. The only sound was the fake heart monitor, which I reached over and switched off. Silence. Damon looked around the room. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at Henderson. He looked at me. "What is this?" he stammered. Is this a joke?" "No, son," I said, swinging my legs off the bed and standing up. I stood tall. No cane, no limp. The adrenaline of justice is a powerful painkiller. This is not a joke. This is a courtroom, and court is now in session. Courtney was rubbing her wrist where I had grabbed her. There was a red mark forming. "You hurt me," she screamed, pointing a finger at me. "Sheriff, did you see that? He assaulted me. He grabbed me. I want to press charges." Sheriff Patterson stepped forward. He didn't look at her hand. He looked at the ceiling. "I saw everything, Mrs. Banks," he said calmly. He pointed to a small black dome in the corner of the ceiling, and so did that. Courtney looked up. The camera lens stared back at her, unblinking. "That camera has been recording for the last 20 minutes, the sheriff continued. "It recorded you conspiring to forge a legal document. It recorded you discussing the liquidation of assets that do not belong to you. And most importantly, it recorded you physically forcing a patient whom you believe to be incapacitated to fingerprint a will against his consent." The sheriff took a step closer. "In the state of Georgia, that is called battery on an elder person. It is also attempted fraud." And looking at this document, he picked up the will from the bed. "It looks like conspiracy to commit grand larceny." Courtney's face went white. She looked at Thorne. "Do something," she shrieked. "You are a lawyer." Thorne shook his head, wiping sweat from his forehead. I didn't know he said his voice high and pitchy. "They told me he wanted to sign. They told me he was lucid. I am just a notary. I didn't touch him. He was throwing them under the bus before the handcuffs even came out." Damon stepped toward me. He held out his hands, palms up, the universal gesture of a liar trying to sell a bridge. "Dad, wait," he said. "Let's all calm down. We were just trying to help you. We thought you were dying. We wanted to make sure your wishes were honored. We were scared, Dad. We were panicked." I looked at him. I looked at the son who had thrown my suitcase in a puddle. "My wishes?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Damon said, nodding vigorously. "We know you want the estate to stay in the family. We were just protecting the legacy." I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. I walked over to him. I stood toe-to-toe with him. I smelled the fear coming off him in waves. "You want to protect the legacy?" I asked. I unfolded the paper. It was a printout of the transcript from the recording in the living room. The one where he told Courtney they would turn the nursing home into a hotel. The one where he called me human waste. I read it out loud. "Rot in here, old man. Rot in here so we can finally live." I looked up. Damon was trembling. "Is that how you protect my legacy, Damon?" "By wishing for me to rot. By planning to evict 100 senior citizens so you can build a spa." Damon gasped. How did you know that?" I tapped the side of my head. "I know everything, Damon. I know about the Porsche. I know about the St. Jude's tuition refund. I know about the trip to the Maldives. I know about the crypto kingdom scam." I took a step closer, forcing him back. "I haven't been in a coma, son. I have been in the control room." I pointed at Marcus. "You see Dr. Sterling over there? He isn't just a doctor. He is the owner of Silver Horizon, and he is my partner." Damon looked at Marcus. Marcus gave him a small, cold salute. "We watched you," I said. "We watched you steal. We watched you lie. And tonight we watched you try to assault a dying man." Damon fell to his knees. It wasn't a gesture of repentance. It was the collapse of a man whose reality had just shattered. "Dad, please," he sobbed. "I am in debt. The loan sharks, they are going to kill me. I needed the money. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was desperate." "You weren't desperate," I said, looking down at him. "You were greedy." There is a difference. A desperate man asks for help. A greedy man takes what isn't his. I turned to the sheriff. "Sheriff," I said, "I think we have seen enough." The sheriff nodded. He unclipped the handcuffs from his belt. The metallic click echoed in the silent room. Damon Banks. "Courtney, Banks, please turn around and place your hands behind your backs." Courtney screamed. "No, you can't arrest me. I am a mother. I have a child." "You should have thought about that before you tried to steal her college fund," I said coldly. The deputies stepped in. They grabbed Courtney's arms. She kicked and screamed, dragging her heels as they marched her out of the room. Damon didn't fight. He let the sheriff cuff him. He looked up at me one last time. His eyes were full of tears. "Dad," he whispered, "what about me? What happens to me?" I looked at him. I felt a twinge of pain in my heart, the old pain, the fatherly pain. But then I looked at my thumb, still stained with the black ink of his betrayal. "I don't know, Damon," I said. I picked up a wet wipe from the bedside table and began to scrub the ink off my thumb. "You are going to a place with bars on the windows," I said. "But unlike this place, the doors don't open from the inside." I turned my back on him. "Get them out of here, Sheriff," I said. I heard the heavy footsteps leaving the room. I heard the door close. I stood there in the silence, scrubbing my thumb until the skin was raw, the ink was gone. But the stain of what they did would never wash away. Henderson cleared his throat. "Mr. Banks, do you want to file the restraining order now?" I turned around. I straightened my tie. "Yes, Henderson," I said. "File it. And file the eviction notice for the house." I looked at Marcus. "Is the car ready?" I asked. "It is waiting out front," Harry Marcus said. "Where are we going?" I picked up my phone. "The real one. We are going to pick up my granddaughter," I said. "I have a promise to keep." The look on a man's face when he realizes he has been betting against the house and the house has been cheating is a very specific shade of white. It is the color of old milk. It is the color of ash. Damon stood pressed against the wall of room 104, his hands trembling by his sides, his eyes darting between me and the police officers. He looked at the hospital bed where I had been lying moments ago. He looked at the IV drip that was now disconnected and swinging idly. He looked at my suit. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked like a fish gasping for air on a dock. "Dad," he stammered. His voice was so quiet it was barely a whisper. You are standing. You are okay." He swallowed hard. "Boff," he stuttered. You recovered. It is a miracle." I laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was the sound of a judge slamming a gavel. "A miracle," I repeated. I walked over to the bedside table. There was a thick manila folder sitting there. It was heavy. It contained 5 months of surveillance logs. It contained bank statements showing every dollar he had wasted. It contained transcripts of every cruel thing he had said to his wife about me. I picked it up. I weighed it in my hand. "You think this is a medical miracle, Damon?" I asked. Damon nodded frantically, a glimmer of hope returning to his eyes. He thought he could spin this. He thought he could play the relieved son. "Yes, Dad," he said, stepping forward, his hands out. "We were so worried. The doctor called us. He said you were dying. We rushed over here to be with you, to say goodbye. We just wanted to hold your hand. You wanted to hold my hand so you could force a fingerprint onto a fraud," I said. I didn't hand him the file. I threw it. I threw it with all the force of a pitcher throwing a fastball. The folder hit him square in the chest. It exploded. Papers flew into the air like confetti. They rained down on him, covering the floor in the white paper trail of his own corruption. Damon flinched, covering his face. "I was never sick," I roared. My voice filled the room, bouncing off the sterile walls. "I have never been sick a day in my life, Damon. I have the heart of an ox and the blood pressure of a teenager. The only thing I am sick of is you." I took a step closer, my shoes crunching on the papers. "I am sick of your greed. I am sick of your laziness. And I am physically ill from the disgust I feel when I look at you." Damon looked down at the papers on the floor. He saw a photo of himself entering the casino. He saw a printout of the text messages between him and Courtney. "The old man is a vegetable. Just sell the land." He looked up at me. The hope was gone. Terror had replaced it. But the doctor," Damon whispered, pointing at Marcus. He said, "He called us." Marcus stepped forward. He took off the stethoscope and dropped it into his pocket. He smoothed his suit jacket. He didn't look like a kindly old doctor anymore. He looked like the business tycoon he was. "I am a doctor's son," Marcus said, his voice deep and gravelly. "I have a PhD in economics, but I don't practice medicine." "Then who," Damon asked, looking around the room, "who runs this place? You said you were the director." "I am the director," Marcus said. "And the owner. And the CEO of Sterling Senior Living." Damon blinked. "Sterling," he whispered. He looked at the plaque on the wall, the one he hadn't bothered to read when he dumped me here 5 months ago. You know him?" Damon asked, looking at me. "Know him," I said. "Marcus and I served in the 101st Airborne together. We dug foxholes together. We built companies together." I pointed to the floor. "You thought you dropped me in a prison, Damon. You thought you threw me into a hole where I would rot and disappear." I smiled a cold, humorless smile. "You dropped me in the VIP suite of my best friend's hotel." Damon's knees gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes. "You have been here the whole time," he whispered. "The whole time," I said. "I didn't live in room 104, I said, gesturing to the small, cramped room. "This is a stage set. We dressed it up for you." I pointed to the ceiling. "I have been living in the penthouse suite on the 4th floor. I have a chef. I have a gym. I have a fiber optic internet connection that I used to monitor every single move you made." Damon looked at Courtney, who was standing near the door, handcuffed and silent. Her mascara was running down her face. She looked at him with pure hatred. "You idiot," she hissed at Damon. "I told you to check the ownership. I told you to do due diligence." "Shut up," Courtney Damon yelled. He looked back at me. So it was you," he asked. "The credit cards, the pizza, the Porsche." "It was me," I said. And the voice, Damon whispered. "The night I called, the voice of Maya." "It was me," I said. Damon put his head in his hands. He started to rock back and forth. "Why," he moaned, "why didn't you just tell me? Why did you let me do this?" "Because you needed to show me who you really were," I said. I walked over to Henderson, my lawyer. He handed me a blue folder. I opened it. "You asked why I let you do this," I said. "I let you do this because I needed cause. Cause for what?" Damon asked, looking up. "Cause for this," I said. I pulled out a document. It was stamped with the official seal of the Fulton County Court. "This is a freezing order," I said. Henderson stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Banks," he said, addressing Damon formally. "As of 9:00 a.m. this morning, Judge Patterson has granted an emergency injunction freezing all assets connected to the Harrison Banks estate." Henderson flipped the page. "This includes the main residence at 4500 Pine Valley Lane, the vacation property in Florida, the investment accounts at Chase and Wells Fargo, and the trust fund previously allocated for Damon Banks." Damon shook his head. "You can't do that," he said, his voice rising in panic. The house is my home. I have rights. I have established residency. You can't just kick me out." "I can," I said. And I just did. I pulled out another paper. "This is an eviction notice," I said. "You see, Damon, you forgot one very important detail when you took over my life. You never put the deed in your name. You tried to. You tried to forge my signature on the transfer documents last month." Damon flinched. "But you failed," I said. "Mrs. Higgins at the clerk's office rejected it. Remember, so legally," I said, leaning down to look him in the eye. "You are a guest who has overstayed his welcome, a guest who has destroyed the property, and a guest who tried to kill the host." Damon scrambled to his feet. He tried to grab my arm, but the sheriff stepped in between us, his hand on his taser. "Dad, please," Damon screamed. "You can't leave me with nothing. I have bills. I have debts. The crypto guys. I borrowed money, Dad. Bad money. If I don't pay them back, they will break my legs." I looked at him. I remembered the day he was born. I remembered holding him in the delivery room, promising to protect him from the world. And I realized that by protecting him, I had ruined him. I had shielded him from consequences for 40 years. I had paid his parking tickets. I had paid off his credit cards. I had bailed him out of every mess he ever made. I had created a man who thought the world was a vending machine that didn't require coins. "I am not leaving you with nothing," Damon, I said. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a single quarter, a shiny silver coin. I tossed it to him. He caught it instinctively. He looked at it confused. I am giving you an opportunity, I said. Call someone who cares, I said. Because I don't. Damon stared at the quarter. Then he looked at me. His face crumpled. The arrogance was gone. The anger was gone. There was only a terrified child looking at a father who had finally turned his back. Dad, he whispered. I am sorry. I will change. I promise. Just give me one more chance. I shook my head. I gave you a chance 5 months ago, I said. I gave you a chance every day for 40 years. I turned to the sheriff. Take them away, Sheriff, I said. The officers moved in. They grabbed Damon's arms. He didn't fight. He went limp. They dragged him out of the room, his shoes scuffing on the papers that detailed his betrayal. Courtney followed, her head hung low. She didn't look at me. She knew the game was over. I stood in the middle of the room. The silence returned. Henderson closed his file. That was difficult, sir, he said softly. Yes, I said, adjusting my cufflinks. It was. I looked at Marcus. Is the car ready? I asked. It is waiting, Harry Marcus said. I walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. I saw the police cruisers flashing their lights. I saw my son being put into the back of one car and my daughter-in-law into another. They were going to jail. Fraud. Forgery. Elder abuse. They would be gone for a long time, and when they got out, they would have nothing. No house, no money, no name. It was harsh. It was brutal. But as I watched the cars drive away, I didn't feel guilt. I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders, a weight I had been carrying for years. I turned back to the room. Marcus, I said. Yes, Harry. Send a crew to the house, I said. Change the locks, put the furniture back, and find my piano. I paused. If they sold it, find the buyer. Pay double. Pay triple. I don't care. Just get it back. Consider it done, Marcus said. I walked toward the door. I stepped over the mess of papers on the floor. I stepped over the fake will. I walked out of the nursing home. The air outside was cold and wet, but it felt clean. I took a deep breath. I was Harrison Banks. I was alive. I was in charge. And I had a granddaughter to save. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut is a mechanical finality that usually signals the end of a conversation, but my son Damon was never one to let reality get in the way of his delusions. The deputies were holding his arms, and he was halfway to the door when he planted his feet. He spun around, his eyes wild with the frantic energy of a man watching his entire world dissolve into smoke. He looked at me, and then he looked at the sheriff, and finally he fixed his gaze on Henderson, my attorney. "Wait!" Damon screamed, pulling against the officers. "Wait, just a minute. You can arrest me. Fine. This is a misunderstanding, and my lawyer will have me out on bail by the morning. But you cannot kick me out of the house." He looked at me with a sneer that was equal parts fear and arrogance. "That house is my residence," he shouted. "I have lived there for 5 years. I have established tenancy. And more importantly, my name is on the deed. You put it there, Dad. Remember, 5 years ago when Mom died, you added me to the title for estate planning purposes. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship." He laughed, a desperate, broken sound. "That means I own half that mansion, old man. You can't evict an owner. Even if I go to jail, I have a right to return to my property. You can't lock me out. I will sue you for illegal eviction. I will sue you for everything you have left." The room went quiet. The sheriff looked at Henderson. It was a valid legal point. In many cases, tenancy laws protect even the worst squatters. If Damon was on the deed, he had a right to be there. Courtney, who had been weeping silently, suddenly perked up. She saw a lifeline. "That is right," she shrieked, twisting her neck to look at me. "We have rights. That is our marital home. My clothes are there. My jewelry is there. You can't touch our stuff." I stood there, smoothing the cuffs of my jacket. I didn't say a word. I just looked at Henderson. Henderson didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. He walked over to Damon. He held the document up so Damon could read the cover page. "Mr. Banks," Henderson said, his voice dry as dust, "you are referring to the 2019 quitclaim deed, correct? The one your father signed shortly after your mother's passing?" "Yes," Damon spat. "The deed. I saw it. I signed it. I own half the house." Henderson nodded slowly. "You did sign a deed," Henderson said. but you seemingly failed to read the underlying structure of the ownership. You see, Damon, your father, did not add you as an individual owner. He added the Damon Bank's living trust as a beneficiary owner. So what Damon yelled, "I control the trust." "It is the same thing." "It is not the same thing," Henderson said, calmly flipping to page 42 of the document. "Because the house is held in a trust, it is subject to the bylaws and stipulations of that trust. And your father, being a man of foresight, included a very specific clause in the governance of that property." Henderson adjusted his glasses. He looked like a professor about to fail a student who hadn't studied for the final exam. "It is called the bad actor clause," Henderson said. "Or more formally, the beneficiary conduct stipulation." Damon blinked. "What?" Henderson began to read from the document. "The trust stipulates that any beneficiary residing in the property may have their residency rights and ownership interest immediately revoked if they are found to have committed an act of gross negligence, fraud, or physical abuse against the grantor of the trust." Henderson paused, letting the words hang in the air. "The grantor is Harrison Banks," Henderson clarified, pointing at me. "And the acts of abuse," Henderson continued, "have been documented extensively. We have video evidence of you conspiring to defraud the grantor. We have audio evidence of you threatening to withhold medical care, which constitutes gross negligence. And tonight, we have witness testimony of attempted physical assault." Henderson snapped the folder shut. The sound was like a pistol shot. "Therefore, as of 9:05 p.m. tonight, the trust has automatically triggered the revocation clause. Your interest in the property has been dissolved. Your right to residency has been terminated. You are not an owner, Mr. Banks. You are a trespasser." Damon's face went from red to a ghostly shade of gray. He shook his head back and forth. "No," he whispered. That's not real. You made that up." "It is very real," Henderson said. "And I have already filed the ex parte order with the court. The locks are being changed as we speak." Damon looked at me. He looked at the man who had built the roof over his head. "Dad," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "You can't do this. If I make bail, where do I go? I have no money. I have no car. If I don't have a house, I am on the street." I walked closer to him. I looked deep into his eyes. "You are worried about where you will sleep?" I asked. "Yes, Dad," Damon sobbed. "Please, I am your son. You can't make me homeless." I thought about the last 5 months. I thought about the smell of the nursing home. I thought about the small room with the bars on the window. I thought about the rain soaking my suit when he kicked me out of the car. "You told me to rot, Damon." I said, my voice low and hard. "You left me in a prison. You stole my wallet so I couldn't buy food. You stole my phone so I couldn't call for help." I leaned in close. "You didn't care if I was homeless," I said. "You didn't care if I died alone in the dark." "But Dad—" "No buts," I roared. I held out my hand. "The keys," I commanded. Damon hesitated. "The keys, Damon," I repeated. "Give them to me. Now." Damon looked at the sheriff. The sheriff nodded, his hand resting on his taser. "Give him the keys, son," the sheriff said, "or we add theft of property to the charge sheet." Damon's shoulders slumped. He tried to reach into his pocket, but the handcuffs stopped him. "They are in my right pocket," he whispered, defeat washing over him like a wave. The sheriff reached into Damon's pocket. He pulled out a keychain. It was a silver keychain with the Mercedes logo. It held the key to the car he no longer owned and the key to the house he no longer lived in. The sheriff handed the keys to me. I held them in my hand. They felt heavy. They felt cold. These were the keys to my sanctuary, the keys to the house where Sarah and I had raised him, the keys he had used to lock me out of my own life. I put them in my pocket. "Thank you," I said. Courtney let out a wail. It was a high, piercing sound of pure selfishness. "What about my clothes?" she screamed. "What about my furs? I have a mink coat in the closet. It is worth $10,000. You can't keep my mink." I looked at her. "Your mink was bought with my credit card, Courtney," I said. "It is evidence now. The forensic accountants will be seizing everything in that house to pay back the money you stole." "You monster!" she shrieked. "You planned this. You trapped us." "I didn't trap you," I said calmly. "I just gave you enough rope. You tied the knot yourselves." I turned to the sheriff. "Get them out of my sight, Sheriff. They are trespassing on private property." The deputies began to drag them toward the door. Damon dragged his feet, his expensive Italian shoes scuffing against the linoleum. He looked back at me one last time. "Dad," he cried. "Dad, I am sorry. I didn't mean it. Please, just let me come home. I will sleep in the garage. I will sleep on the floor. Don't send me to jail knowing I have nowhere to go." I stood like a statue. I didn't blink. I didn't waver. I watched as they were hauled out into the hallway. I heard the heavy security doors buzz open. I heard the rain falling outside. I walked to the window. I watched the police officers shove them into the back of the squad cars. Damon had to bend awkwardly to fit his tall frame into the cramped back seat. He looked small. He looked broken. For the first time in his life, he was facing a night without a safety net. No soft bed, no room service, no daddy to write a check. Just a cold bench in a holding cell and the terrifying realization that when the sun came up, he was a man with nothing. Henderson walked up beside me. He looked out the window too. "Do you want me to call a cleaning crew for the house, sir?" he asked. "Yes," I said, keeping my eyes on the taillights of the police cars as they faded into the rainy night. "Change the locks," I said. "Clean the carpets. Throw away the modern furniture they bought. Bring back my recliner." I paused. "And Henderson." "Yes, sir. Make sure the guest wing is ready. I have a feeling my granddaughter might want to sleep over this weekend, and I want it to smell like cookies, not like Courtney's perfume." "Consider it done," Henderson said. I turned away from the window. The room was quiet. The fake heart monitor was silent. The stage was empty. The actors had been carried off. I touched the keys in my pocket. I was homeless for 5 months because I trusted the wrong people. Tonight, the tables had turned. I had my home back. And Damon Banks was about to learn that the hardest prison to escape is the one you build for yourself with bricks of greed and mortar of lies. I looked at Marcus. "Let's go, Marcus," I said. "Where to?" Marcus asked. "To my house," I said. "I believe there is a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle that my son opened but didn't finish. It would be a shame to let it go to waste. A cornered rat is dangerous not because it is strong, but because it has nothing left to lose. And when a rat has nothing left to lose, it will bite anything within reach." Courtney Banks was cornered. She was standing in the middle of room 104 with handcuffs on her wrists and her mascara running down her face in black streaks. She had lost the house. She had lost the money. She had lost the Porsche. She had even lost the illusion that she was a decent human being. But she had one card left to play, the cruelest card in the deck. She stopped screaming. She stopped crying. She straightened her back and looked at me with eyes that were cold and dead. "Fine," she hissed. "Take the house, Harrison. Take the money. Send us to jail. But you are forgetting something." She looked at the sheriff. "I want my daughter," she said. Damon looked up from the floor. He wiped his nose on his shoulder. "Maya," he whispered. "Yes," Courtney said, her voice gaining strength. "Maya, she is a minor, and we are her parents. We have legal custody. You can kick us out of the mansion, but you cannot keep our child." She smiled, a twisted, victorious smile. "If you arrest us," she said to the sheriff, "we will place her in foster care. We will deny Harrison visitation. We have that right. If I go down, I am taking her with me. You will never see her again, Harrison. You will die in this nursing home without ever hearing her voice again." I felt a cold rage tighten my chest. It was the specific rage of a grandfather protecting his blood. She was using a 14-year-old girl as a human shield. She was treating my granddaughter like a poker chip to be cashed in for leverage. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. He looked at Henderson. "Mr. Banks," he said quietly, "she has a point. Without a court order transferring custody, the parents have the primary right. If they demand she goes into the system until they make bail, I have to follow the law." Courtney laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. "You hear that, old man?" she sneered. "You thought you won, but you lose. You lose the only thing you actually care about. Now call off your dogs. Drop the charges. Give us the keys back. And maybe, just maybe, we will let you see her on Christmas." I looked at Courtney. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to, because the door to the connecting room, the room where Marcus kept his medical supplies, slowly creaked open. Courtney froze. Damon turned his head. A small figure stepped out into the harsh fluorescent light. It was Maya. She was still wearing her school uniform. She was holding the burner phone I had given her. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. But she wasn't crying anymore. She looked older. She looked like she had grown up 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Maya Courtney gasped. Her face went white. What are you doing here? Maya didn't look at her mother. She walked past the police officers. She walked past her father who was cowering on the floor. She walked straight to me and stood by my side. She took my hand. Her grip was tight. I heard you, Maya said. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I heard everything she said. Courtney's eyes darted around the room. Baby Courtney stammered, putting on her fake motherly voice. Baby, come here. Grandpa kidnapped you, didn't he? He is confusing you. Come to Mommy. We are going to go home. Maya looked at her mother. She looked at the handcuffs. She looked at the fake will on the floor. Home, she asked. You mean the house you tried to steal? Maya, don't talk like that, Courtney snapped. You don't understand adult business. I understand enough, Maya said. She held up the burner phone. I heard you in the living room, Mom. I heard you tell Dad that I was annoying. I heard you say you wanted to send me to public school so you could buy a boat. I heard you say that Grandpa dying was the best thing that could happen to us. Maya Courtney screamed. Put that phone down. Come here right now. I am your mother. You are not a mother, Maya said. The words hung in the air like a slap. A mother protects her kids, Maya said. A mother doesn't steal her daughter's college fund to buy a purse. A mother doesn't try to hurt Grandpa. She took a step closer to Courtney. I am not going with you, she said. I am not going to foster care. And I am certainly not going anywhere with a woman who calls me a burden behind my back. Courtney looked furious. She lunged forward, but the deputy held her back. You ungrateful little brat, she screamed. I gave you life. You belong to me. I am not property, Maya shouted back. I am a person, and you are a bad person. I squeezed Maya's hand. I felt her trembling now. The adrenaline was wearing off and the heartbreak was setting in. That is enough, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I stepped forward, shielding Maya with my body. You wanted a legal battle, Courtney, I said. You wanted to talk about custody. I looked at Henderson. Give me the file, I said. Henderson handed me a thick red folder. It wasn't the financial file, it was the private investigation file. The one I had hoped I wouldn't have to use. But she had forced my hand. I opened it. You claimed to be a fit parent, I said. You claimed to provide a stable home. I pulled out a photograph. It was grainy but clear enough. It showed Courtney sitting at a table in a dimly lit restaurant. She was holding hands with a man who was definitely not Damon. Damon looked up. He squinted at the photo. Who is that? Damon whispered. I looked at the caption on the back. This is Jean-Luc, I said. Your personal trainer, Courtney, the one you pay $300 an hour for private sessions. I pulled out another document, a credit card statement. It seems you and Jean-Luc have been very busy, I said. Hotel rooms at the Four Seasons, dinners at Le Bernardin, gifts from Tiffany's, all paid for with the joint account you share with Damon. Damon made a sound like a wounded animal. You cheated on me, he choked out. With the tennis guy. Courtney's face flushed red. It is not what it looks like, she stammered. He was just comforting me. You were always drunk, Damon. You were useless. I needed someone to talk to. You talked to him in a hotel room for 3 hours every Tuesday, I asked, dryly. I threw the photos on the floor next to the fake will. Adultery, I said. Misappropriation of marital funds. I turned to Damon. And you, son, you aren't innocent. I pulled out a spreadsheet. This is a log from an online gambling site called Crypto Bet, I said. Damon flinched. Over the last 6 months, you have lost $80,000 playing virtual poker, I said. I pointed to a specific line item. And this deposit here, the big one, $50,000. Do you know where that came from? Damon shook his head, tears streaming down his face. That was the transfer from the St. Jude's tuition refund, I said. Maya gasped. She looked at her father. Dad, she whispered. You gambled my school money. Damon couldn't look at her. He stared at the floor. I thought I could win it back, he sobbed. I had a system. I was going to double it, Maya. I swear. I did it for you. You did it for the rush, I roared. You gambled your daughter's education on a hand of cards. I closed the folder. I handed it to the sheriff. Sheriff, I said. This folder contains evidence of substance abuse, gambling addiction, and child endangerment. It also contains an emergency petition for temporary guardianship signed by Judge Patterson 10 minutes ago. The sheriff took the folder. He looked at the signed order. "It looks like everything is in order, Mr. Banks," he said. "The court has granted emergency custody to the grandfather based on imminent risk to the child's welfare." Courtney started to scream. It wasn't words anymore, just a primal sound of rage and defeat. "No," she shrieked. "No, you planned this, you devil." The sheriff nodded to his deputies. "Take them away," he said. The officers grabbed Courtney. She fought them, kicking and spitting. They had to drag her out of the room. Her heels scraped across the floor, leaving black marks. "I hate you," she screamed as they hauled her into the hallway. "I hate all of you." Damon didn't fight. He stood up slowly. He looked at me. Then he looked at Maya. "Maya," he whispered. "I am sorry." Maya turned her face away. She buried her face in my jacket. She wouldn't look at him. I watched my son, realizing that this was the moment he broke her heart completely. He realized that no amount of money could buy back the look of disgust in her eyes. The deputy took Damon's arm. "Let's go, Mr. Banks." Damon walked out. He slumped his shoulders. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. The door closed. The room was quiet. The only sound was Maya crying softly into my chest. I wrapped my arms around her. I rested my chin on the top of her head. "It is over, baby girl," I whispered. "It is over." She looked up at me. Her face was wet with tears. "Why, Grandpa?" she asked. "Why are they like that? Why do they love money more than me?" I wiped a tear from her cheek with my thumb. "Because they are broken, Maya," I said. "Somewhere along the way, they lost their compass. They forgot what matters." I kissed her forehead. "But you are not broken," I said. "You are strong. You stood up to them. You chose the truth." I looked at Marcus, who was standing by the window, wiping his own eyes. "Let's go home, Marcus," I said. "To the mansion?" Marcus asked. "No," I said. "To the house. It is a home again now, because the people who live in it love each other." I took Maya's hand. We walked out of room 104. We walked down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past the security guard. We walked out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking and the moon was shining through. I looked up at the sky. I had lost a son today, but I had saved a daughter. And as I helped Maya into the back of Marcus's car, I knew that was a trade I would make 1,000 times over. "We are going to be okay, astronaut," I whispered. "Grandpa is driving now, and I know the way. They say that rats are the first to jump off a sinking ship, but that is an insult to rats. Rats jump because they want to survive. Courtney Banks jumped because she wanted to find a better ship. The booking area of the Fulton County Jail is a cold place. It smells of industrial cleaner and human misery. The fluorescent lights buzz with a sound that drills into your skull. It is the great equalizer. It does not care if you are wearing a Chanel dress or rags. Once those handcuffs go on, you are just another number in the system." I stood on the other side of the glass partition next to Henderson and the sheriff. I watched them being processed. Damon was sitting on a metal bench looking at the floor. He was broken. The reality of the night had crushed him. He was weeping silently, tears dripping onto his ruined Italian suit. But Courtney was not weeping. Courtney was calculating. I saw her eyes darting around the room. She was doing the math. She was running the numbers in her head. Damon was broke. The trust was gone. The house was gone. The Porsche was gone. And now he was facing felony charges. He was no longer a provider. He was an anchor. And Courtney Banks did not do anchors. She looked at Damon. There was no love in her eyes. There was no pity. There was only the cold, hard realization that her investment had crashed. She stood up. She walked over to the desk sergeant. Her handcuffs rattled against the metal counter. "I need a lawyer," she said. Her voice was sharp, demanding. "You will get a public defender at your arraignment, ma'am," the sergeant said without looking up. "I don't need a defense attorney," Courtney snapped. "I need a divorce attorney." Damon's head snapped up. He looked at her. He blinked his red, swollen eyes. "What?" Damon whispered. Courtney didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the sergeant. "I want to file for legal separation immediately," she said. "I want it on the record tonight, before the charges are formally filed." Courtney, Damon said, standing up. His voice was trembling. "Courtney, what are you doing? We are in this together. You said we were a team." Courtney spun around. The mask of the loving wife dropped completely. Underneath was something ugly and jagged. "A team." She laughed. A team implies that you bring something to the table, Damon. What do you have? Nothing. You have nothing. She took a step toward him, her face twisted in a sneer. You told me you were rich, she hissed. You told me the old man was a vegetable. You told me the money was secure. You lied to me, Damon. You dragged me into this mess. I did it for us. Damon pleaded, reaching out his cuffed hands. I bought you the car. I bought you the jewelry. And you paid for it with stolen money, Courtney screamed. And now they are going to take it all back. I am not going to prison for your incompetence, Damon. I am not going to be saddled with your debt. She turned back to the sergeant. I am a victim here, she declared loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. I was manipulated. I was coerced. I want to file a statement against him. He forced me to sign those papers. He forced me to spend that money. Damon stood there frozen. It was the final blow. He had lost his father. He had lost his daughter. And now the woman he had destroyed his life for was carving him up like a turkey to save her own skin. She turned him in. Just like that. I watched from behind the glass. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was exactly what I expected. Henderson looked at me. Do you want to go in there, sir? He asked. Yes, I said. I want to look her in the eye when the other shoe drops. We walked into the processing room. The heavy door buzzed open. Courtney saw me. Her face changed instantly. The anger vanished. The arrogance vanished. In a split second, she morphed into a terrified, fragile woman. She was an actress, and this was the performance of her life. Harrison, she cried. She ran toward me. The officer stepped in to block her, but she threw herself against the barrier. Harrison, thank God you are here, she sobbed. You have to help me, please. You know me. You know I am a good person. I stopped. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had lived in my house for 5 years. The woman who had spent my money. The woman who had called me human waste. A good person, I repeated flatly. Yes, she cried, tears streaming down her face. It was Damon. It was all Damon. He is a monster, Harrison. He threatened me. He said if I didn't help him, he would hurt me. He said if I didn't spend the money, he would kick me out. She looked back at Damon, who was sitting on the bench, staring at the wall in shock. He is abusive, she whispered, leaning in close to the glass. He is a gambler. He is a liar. I was a hostage in that house, Harrison. I was just trying to survive. I tried to stop him. I tried to tell him it was wrong to hurt you. But he wouldn't listen. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. I am just a girl, Harrison. I was scared. Please. Tell the sheriff to let me go. I will testify against him. I will tell them everything. Just don't let me go to jail for his crimes. I am family. I looked at her. I let the silence hang in the air. She really thought I was stupid. She thought she could bat her eyelashes and cry a few tears and I would forget the last 5 months. She thought she could play the damsel in distress and I would be the white knight. But I wasn't a knight. I was the king she had tried to dethrone. I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. You were forced, I asked. Yes, she nodded vigorously. Forced. So Damon forced you to buy the Porsche, I asked. Yes, she lied. He made me drive it. And Damon forced you to book the suite at the Four Seasons with your personal trainer, I asked. Courtney froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And Damon forced you to try to steal Maya's tuition money, I continued, my voice rising. Did he force you to call my granddaughter a burden? Did he force you to plan a renovation of my nursing home while you thought I was dying in the next room? I took a step closer. You are not a victim, Courtney. You are not a hostage. I pointed a finger at her face. You are the architect. You are the one who whispered in his ear. You are the one who wanted the lifestyle. Damon is weak, yes, he is a fool. But you are malicious. You saw a weak man and you rode him like a pack mule until he collapsed. And now that he is down, you are trying to shoot him to save yourself. Courtney's face hardened. The tears stopped. The mask fell off again. So what, she spat. He is a loser, and you are a bitter old man. You can't prove anything. It is my word against his, and the jury will believe the crying wife over the gambling addict. I will walk Harrison. I always land on my feet. I smiled. You might beat the fraud charges, I said. Maybe. If you get a good lawyer, I signaled to Henderson. But you won't beat this. Henderson stepped forward. He placed a heavy file on the metal table. It wasn't the police file. It was a black folder with the seal of the Internal Revenue Service. What is this? Courtney asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. This, I said, is a forensic audit of your business. Courtney Banks Art Consulting. Courtney went pale. I don't have a business, she stammered. I mean, I do some consulting on the side. It is a hobby. It is a shell company, I said. I opened the file. For the last 3 years, you have been funneling money from our joint family accounts into this business, I explained. You claimed expenses for art acquisition, travel, client dinners. I pointed to a spreadsheet. But you never bought any art, Courtney. You bought shoes, you bought spa treatments, you bought vacations for you and your boyfriend. I turned the page. And here's the best part. You claimed all of these personal expenses as business deductions. You filed tax returns claiming a loss to get a refund while living a life of luxury on unreported income. I looked at the sheriff. Sheriff, I said, in addition to the state charges, I believe the federal agents from the Economic Crimes Division are waiting in the lobby. Economic crimes, Courtney whispered. Tax evasion, I said. Money laundering. Wire fraud. I closed the file. You see, Courtney, you were so busy trying to steal my future that you forgot to cover your tracks in the past. You left a paper trail a mile wide. The door opened. 2 men in dark suits walked in. They didn't look like local police. They looked like accountants who carried guns. Courtney Banks, one of them said, holding up a badge. We have a federal warrant for your arrest regarding tax evasion and interstate wire fraud. Courtney backed away. She hit the wall. No, she screamed. No, you can't. This isn't fair. I just wanted a nice life. I deserve nice things. You deserve a cell, I said. The federal agents moved in. They didn't use handcuffs. They used shackles. They chained her wrists to her waist. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were wild. Harrison, please, she begged. I will do anything. I will sign anything. Just don't let the feds take me. They don't play games. Neither do I. Courtney, I said. I turned my back on her. I heard her screaming as they let her out. She was screaming about her rights. She was screaming about her mink coat. She was screaming that it was all a mistake. But nobody was listening. I looked at Damon. He was still sitting on the bench. He hadn't moved. He had watched the whole thing. He had watched his wife betray him, and then he had watched his father destroy her. He looked up at me. She was right, he whispered. About what I asked. I am a loser, he said. I let her do that. I let her run everything. I just wanted her to be happy, Dad. I just wanted her to love me. I looked at him. I saw the little boy who used to scrape his knees and come running to me for a Band-Aid. But I couldn't fix this. This wasn't a scraped knee. This was a severed limb. She never loved you, son, I said gently. She loved the reflection of herself she saw in your wallet. And when the wallet was empty, she broke the mirror. Damon nodded. He put his head in his hands. What happens now? He asked. Now you face the music, I said. I walked to the door. Henderson gathered the files. We are done here, sir, Henderson said. Yes, I said. We are done. I walked out of the processing room. The air in the hallway felt lighter. The architect of the collapse had been buried under her own design. Courtney Banks was gone. She would spend the next 10 years trading cigarettes for lipstick in a federal prison. It was a grim satisfaction, but it was justice. I walked out into the lobby where Marcus was waiting with Maya. Maya looked at me. She saw the look on my face. Is she gone? Grandpa Maya asked. Yes, astronaut, I said. She is gone. Maya didn't ask where. She didn't ask for how long. She just took my hand. Can we go home now? She asked. Yes, I said. Let's go home. I led them out into the night. The storm was over. The streets were wet, but the sky was clear. I had cleaned house. I had taken out the trash. And now it was time to rebuild. Poverty has a texture. It feels like grit in your teeth and grease under your fingernails. It smells like bleach and damp wool. For 30 days, my son Damon had been living in this texture. He was no longer the Prince of Atlanta. He was resident number 49 at the downtown Salvation Army shelter. He slept on a cot that smelled of other men's sweat. He ate oatmeal that tasted like paste, and during the day he worked. For the first time in his 40 years, Damon Banks had a job that I didn't give him. He wasn't a vice president. He wasn't a consultant. He was the guy who scrubbed the brake dust off the rims of luxury cars at the Sparkle and Shine car wash. I knew this because I had a private investigator watching him. Not to interfere, not to help, but to ensure he didn't run, and to ensure he was still alive. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was beating down on the asphalt. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my old office at Banks Logistics. I had come out of retirement officially. The board had begged me to return after the scandal with Damon made the news. They needed a steady hand on the wheel. They needed Harrison Banks. But as I looked down from the 30th floor, I didn't feel like a titan of industry. I felt like a ghost haunting my own building. I looked at the report on my desk. Subject: Damon Banks. Status: employed. Hourly wage: $12. $12. He used to spend $12 on a bottle of water. Now he scrubbed mud for an hour to earn it. I looked out the window. Down on the street, I saw a figure walking toward the building. Even from this height, I recognized the walk. It was a shuffle now, not a strut. But it was him. Damon had walked 5 miles from the car wash. He was wearing his work uniform, a gray jumpsuit that was too short in the legs. He had tried to clean it up. He had tried to slick back his hair with water from a public fountain. But you cannot wash away the look of desperation. He was coming here. I knew he would eventually. The shelter kicks everyone out at 7 in the morning. He had finished his shift, and now, driven by hunger, or perhaps a lingering delusion of grandeur, he was coming to the castle he thought was his birthright. I pressed the button on the intercom. "Security," I said. "Yes, Mr. Banks," the head of security replied. "There is a man approaching the main entrance," I said. "He is wearing a gray jumpsuit. We see him, sir. We are intercepting." "Do not hurt him," I said quickly. "Just deny entry, and patch the audio to my office. I want to hear." "Understood, sir." I watched as Damon reached the revolving doors. These were doors he had walked through 1,000 times. Doors where the doormen used to tip their hats and say, "Good morning, Mr. Damon." Today, the doormen stepped in front of him. They crossed their arms. These were new guys. They didn't know him. They just saw a dirty man trying to enter a Class A office building. I heard the audio crackle to life in my office speakers. "Excuse me, sir," the guard said. "You can't come in here. Deliveries are around the back." I saw Damon straighten his spine. He tried to summon the old arrogance, but it was thin and brittle like dried leaves. "I am not a delivery boy," Damon said. His voice was raspy. "I am Damon Banks. This is my father's building. I used to be the vice president of operations. I am here to see Harrison Banks." The guard laughed. It wasn't mean. It was just dismissive. "Yeah, and I am the King of England," the guard said. "Look, buddy, Mr. Banks is on the top floor running a billion-dollar company. He doesn't see visitors without an appointment, and he definitely doesn't see guys who look like they just crawled out of a drain pipe." "Check your list," Damon pleaded. "Check the database. My face is on the company website, or it used to be. Just call up. Tell him his son is downstairs. Tell him I just want 5 minutes. I am looking for work. I can file papers. I can answer phones. I will do anything." I gripped the edge of my desk. My knuckles turned white. Here was my son, the boy who had driven a Porsche, the man who had mocked me for being old. He was begging for an entry-level job in the mailroom. He was begging for scraps at the table he used to sit at the head of. "Sir, you need to step back," the guard said, losing patience. "You are scaring the clients." "I am a client," Damon shouted, his voice cracking. "I am a Banks. My name is on the building. Look up there." He pointed to the massive steel letters on the skyline. "That is my name." The guard stepped forward. He put a hand on his baton, not drawing it but warning him. "That name belongs to Harrison Banks," the guard said coldly. "You are trespassing. If you don't walk away in 3 seconds, I am calling the police, and I hear you already have a record." Damon froze. The threat of police worked. He was out on bail pending trial. One wrong move, one disturbance of the peace, and his bail would be revoked. He would go straight to county jail until his court date. He lowered his hand. He slumped his shoulders. "Please," he whispered. "I am hungry." It was a whisper so faint the microphone almost missed it. "I am just hungry." The guard softened just a fraction. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a protein bar. He tossed it to Damon. "Take this and go," the guard said. "Don't come back here." Damon caught the bar. He looked at it. It was a cheap chocolate bar. A month ago he would have thrown it in the trash. Today, he ripped the wrapper open with his teeth and shoved half of it into his mouth before he even turned around. He turned away from the glass doors. He chewed frantically, swallowing without tasting. He walked back toward the street. I watched him go. I turned off the audio. The office was silent again. I sank into my leather chair. I swiveled around to face the view of the city, but I didn't see the skyscrapers. I saw the past. I saw Damon at 5 years old running into this office with a drawing he made. I saw him at 16 asking for the keys to the car. I saw him at 25 graduating with a degree I had paid for. I felt a tear run down my cheek. I expected to feel victory. This was the moment of total defeat for my enemy. I had crushed him. I had humiliated him. I had proven that without me he was nothing. But I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a failure. A father's job is to raise a man who can stand on his own 2 feet. I had raised a parasite. I had watered the weeds and starved the flowers. I had given him everything except the struggle he needed to grow roots. If I had let him fail when he was 20, maybe he wouldn't be begging for food when he was 40. If I hadn't bailed him out of that first DUI, maybe he wouldn't have gambled away his daughter's future. I killed him with kindness. I whispered to the empty room. I loved him too much to let him hurt. And in doing so, I ensured he would hurt forever. My secretary buzzed in. "Mr. Banks, the board meeting is starting in 5 minutes. Are you ready?" I wiped my face with a handkerchief. I took a deep breath. "Yes," I said. "I am ready." I stood up. I walked to the window one last time. Damon was a small gray dot on the sidewalk, now disappearing into the crowd of commuters. He was just another face in the city, another man struggling to survive. I wanted to run down there. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run to the elevator, to go down to the street, to grab him, to hug him, to give him a job, to write him a check, to fix it. That is what fathers do. We fix things. But I forced my feet to stay planted on the expensive carpet. "No," I said aloud. "If I go down there now, I interrupt the lesson. If I save him now, he learns that he can always be saved. He learns that rock bottom has a trapdoor that leads back to the penthouse. He needs to stay at the bottom. He needs to feel the cold. He needs to know that the name Banks doesn't mean free pass. It means work." I placed my hand on the cold glass. "Survive, son," I whispered. "Just survive. If you can survive this winter without me, you might just become a man by spring, but I can't be your coat anymore." I turned my back onto the window. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my portfolio. I walked out of the office, leaving my son on the street. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than building the company, harder than burying my wife. It was the act of love that felt exactly like betrayal. But as I walked into the boardroom, I knew it was the only way. The fire that burns the forest down is also the fire that allows the new seeds to grow. Damon was burning, and all I could do was pray that there was a seed somewhere in those ashes waiting to sprout. The smell of a car wash is a unique blend of chemicals and misery. It smells of cherry-scented soap that tries too hard to cover up the stench of wet pavement and exhaust fumes. It was 1 month since the police had dragged my son out of the nursing home in handcuffs. 1 month since he had pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of fraud in exchange for probation and community service. He avoided prison time because I refused to testify against him at the sentencing. I didn't want him in a cage. I wanted him in the world, but I wanted him in the real world. The world where you eat what you kill. The world where if you don't work, you don't sleep. I sat in the back of my town car as my driver navigated the entrance to the Sparkle and Shine car wash on the outskirts of Atlanta. It was a hot day, the kind of humid southern heat that sticks your shirt to your back the second you step outside. I watched the line of cars moving slowly through the tunnel. At the end of the tunnel was the drying station. That was the lowest rung of the ladder. That was where the guys with the towels stood waiting to wipe down the rims and the windows for minimum wage and whatever loose change the drivers decided to toss out the window. And there he was, Damon. I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost 30 pounds. His face was gaunt, the cheekbones sharp against his skin, which was tanned a deep brown from hours in the unforgiving sun. His hair, the hair he used to spend hundreds of dollars styling, was shaved close to his skull, probably to save money on haircuts. He was wearing a neon yellow t-shirt that was stained with grease and water. He was holding a rag in each hand, moving with a frantic energy I had never seen in him before. A white SUV pulled up. Damon rushed forward. He started wiping the wheels. He bent down his knees, hitting the wet concrete. He scrubbed hard. He didn't look at the driver. He kept his head down. The posture of a man who is trying to be invisible. I opened the car door. The heat hit me like a physical blow. I told my driver to wait. I walked across the wet pavement. My cane tapped rhythmically against the ground. Click, click, click. I stopped 10 feet away from him. He didn't see me at first. He was too focused on the chrome rim. He was sweating. Sweat dripped off his nose and splashed onto his hands. "Damon," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the sprayers and the vacuums. He froze. His shoulders stiffened. He stayed crouched for a second like an animal deciding whether to run or fight. Then slowly, painfully, he stood up. He turned around. He saw me. The shame that washed over his face was so visceral I could almost feel it. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at his dirty hands. He looked at his stained shirt. He looked at my suit, pristine and tailored. He tried to wipe his hands on his pants, but it just smeared more grease. "Dad," he whispered. He looked around to see if his manager was watching. He looked terrified that he was going to get fired for talking to a customer. "Dad, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You shouldn't be here. Look at me. I am a mess." I looked him up and down. I didn't look with judgment. I looked with assessment. "You are working," I said. Damon let out a broken laugh. "Yeah," he said. "I am working. I am the towel boy, Dad. I am 40 years old and I am wiping wheels for $12 an hour. Are you happy? Did you come here to see it? To gloat?" I took a step closer. "I didn't come to gloat, Damon," I said. "I came to see if you were still alive." Damon looked at me, and then he broke. It wasn't a slow breakdown. It was instant. His legs gave out. He collapsed onto the wet concrete right there in front of the SUV. He fell to his knees. He didn't care about the water soaking his pants. He didn't care about the people watching. He put his face in his dirty hands and he sobbed. "Dad, I can't do it," he cried. "I can't do it anymore. It is too hard. My back hurts. My hands are raw. I sleep in a shelter, Dad. I sleep next to strangers who scream in the night. I eat garbage. I am hungry all the time." He looked up at me. His face was streaked with tears and grease. "Please, Dad," he begged, reaching out a hand toward my pant leg but stopping short of touching me. "Please take me back. I learned my lesson. I swear to God I learned it. I know I was a brat. I know I was awful. But I can't live like this. I am trash, Dad. I am garbage. I belong in the gutter." He bowed his head, sobbing into the pavement. "I am sorry," he choked out. "I am so sorry for everything. For Mom's piano, for Maya, for the nursing home. I was insane. I was evil. Just please, save me." I looked down at my son, my only child. Every fiber of my being wanted to reach down and pull him up. Every instinct of a father wanted to say, "Okay, get in the car. Let's go home. Let's get a steak. Let's forget this happened." But I looked at his hands. For the first time in his life, they were calloused. For the first time in his life, he knew the value of $1 because he had bled for it. If I saved him now, I would kill the man he was becoming. If I picked him up, he would never learn to stand. I stood firm. I planted my cane on the ground. "Stand up, Damon," I commanded. He looked up, surprised by the sharpness of my tone. "Stand up," I repeated louder. "A Banks does not kneel in the dirt. Get on your feet." Damon sniffled. He wiped his nose with his forearm. Slowly, he pushed himself up. He stood before me, swaying slightly from exhaustion and heat. He looked at me, expecting a hug, expecting a check. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Damon's eyes followed my hand. I saw the flash of hope. He thought I was reaching for my wallet. He thought I was reaching for the black card. He thought salvation had arrived. I pulled out a small blue booklet. It was a standard issue savings passbook from the local community bank. The kind you give to a child when they open their first account with birthday money. I held it out to him. Damon took it. His hands were shaking. He opened it. He looked at the first page. His name was printed at the top. Damon Banks. He looked at the balance line. He blinked. He looked closer. It read $0.00. He looked up at me, confusion clouding his teary eyes. "Dad," he whispered. "It is empty." "Yes," I said. "It is empty." I stepped closer so only he could hear me over the roar of the car wash blowers. 40 years ago, I opened a book just like that for you, I said. And over 40 years, I filled it. I filled it with millions of dollars. I filled it with cars and houses and vacations. I filled it with a life you didn't earn. I pointed at the book in his hand. And you burned it, Damon. You took the fire of your greed and you incinerated every single cent I gave you. You turned a legacy into ash. Damon looked down at the empty lines. So why are you giving me this? He asked, his voice trembling. Is this a joke? No, I said. It is a challenge. I pointed at the car wash behind him. You have a job, I said. It is a hard job, a dirty job, but it is an honest job. You are going to take your paycheck every week, I said. And you are going to put 10% of it into that book. You are going to watch the numbers grow, not because I wired them to you, but because you sweated for them. Damon shook his head. But Dad, 10% of this, it is pennies. It will take 100 years to save anything real. It will take as long as it takes, I said. I looked him deep in the eyes. I am not going to give you money, Damon. Not today, not tomorrow. I am not going to buy you a house. I am not going to buy you a car. But I am giving you a finish line. Finish line? He asked. 5 years, I said, holding up 5 fingers. You stay out of trouble for 5 years. You keep a job for 5 years. You fill that book with your own money for 5 years. You prove to me that you can be a man who builds instead of a man who destroys. I paused, letting the weight of the offer settle on him. If you do that, if you walk into my office in 5 years with that book and a clean record, then we will talk. Then we will talk about the future. Then we will talk about family. But until then, I said, stepping back, you are on your own. Damon stared at the book. He looked at the empty balance. 0. It was a reflection of his life. But for the first time, it was a 0 that belonged to him. 5 years, he whispered. That is a lifetime. It is the time it takes to build a character, I said. A horn honked behind him. The SUV driver was waiting. The manager was walking over looking angry. Hey, Banks, the manager yelled. Quit yapping and dry the car. We got a line here. Damon flinched. He looked at the manager. He looked at me. I didn't move. I didn't save him from the manager. Damon took a deep breath. He wiped his face with his dirty rag. He looked at the blue book one last time. He shoved it into the pocket of his neon jumpsuit. He stood up straighter. Okay, Dad, he said. His voice was different. It wasn't the voice of a child begging. It was the voice of a man accepting a sentence. Okay, 5 years. He turned away from me. He walked back to the white SUV. He started drying the windows. He moved with purpose. He moved with dignity. I watched him for a minute. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to take him to lunch. I wanted to buy him new shoes. But I forced myself to turn around. I walked back to my car. Click, click, click. I got in. The air conditioning was cold. The leather was soft. Drive, I told the driver. As we pulled away, I looked out the tinted window. I saw my son scrubbing a tire in the heat. He looked miserable. He looked exhausted. But he looked real. He was finally playing the game with his own chips. And even though he had nothing, he had more potential in that moment than he ever had with a trust fund. I touched the picture of Maya I kept in my pocket. He is climbing, Maya, I whispered. It is a long way up, but he is climbing. I closed my eyes. See you in 5 years, son. Make it count. The fire in the hearth was real wood this time, not the gas log set Courtney had installed because she said real wood was too messy and smelled like a campground. It was oak, old seasoned oak that burned slow and hot, throwing warm orange light across the room. It crackled and popped a natural rhythm that replaced the artificial silence of the house I used to know. I sat in my leather wingback chair. It was the old one. The one with the scratch on the armrest from where Damon's cat had clawed it 20 years ago. Henderson had retrieved it from the storage unit where Courtney had dumped it. It smelled of leather and tobacco and memory. It smelled like home. Across from me, sitting on the Persian rug, was Maya. She was laughing. It is a sound I hadn't heard in years. A real laugh. Not a polite giggle for guests. Not a nervous chuckle to appease her mother. It was a belly laugh, loud and uninhibited. She was flipping through an old photo album, the pages yellowed with age. Look at this, Grandpa, she said, pointing to a black and white photo. Is that you? You have so much hair. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. I looked at the young man in the photo. He was standing next to a delivery truck wearing a uniform that was 2 sizes too big. He looked tired, but he looked hungry. He looked like a man who was ready to fight the world. "That is me, astronaut," I said. "That was the day I bought my first truck. I was 22. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but I had a plan." Maya traced the face in the photo. "You look scary," she said, smiling. "I was scary," I said. "I had to be." Marcus was sitting in the other chair nursing a glass of port. He chuckled, a low rumble that shook his chest. "He was terrifying," Marcus said, winking at Maya. "He used to negotiate shipping contracts like he was declaring war. I saw him make a grown man cry over a fuel surcharge in 1985. Maya giggled. She turned the page. She stopped. Her finger hovered over a picture. It was a photo of Damon. He was 10 years old, sitting on a bicycle in the driveway. He was smiling that wide, innocent smile before the entitlement set in, before the world told him he was special just for existing. The room went quiet for a moment. The fire popped. Maya didn't cry. She didn't look away. She looked at her father with a strange expression. It wasn't hate. It was pity. "He looks happy here," she whispered. "He was," I said softly. "He was very happy. He loved that bike. He fixed a flat tire on it once all by himself. It took him 4 hours, but he did it." I leaned back in the chair. That was the problem, I thought. I stopped letting him fix the tires. I started buying him new bikes. I stole his struggle. And in stealing his struggle, I stole his victory. Maya turned the page. She moved on. She was resilient. Children are like water. They flow around the rocks that block their path. She was doing well in school. She was back at St. Jude's. She had joined the debate team. She was learning that her voice mattered not because she was a Banks, but because she had something to say. I looked at the side table next to me. There was a stack of papers there. Heavy, cream-colored paper bound in a blue folder. The new will. Henderson had brought it over this morning. He had drafted it exactly to my specifications. I picked up my fountain pen. The weight of it felt familiar in my hand. Marcus watched me. He knew what was in the folder. "Are you sure, Harry?" he asked quietly so Maya wouldn't hear. I looked at him. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life, Marcus." I opened the folder. I read the clauses one last time. Clause 1. The Harrison Banks Foundation. 90% of the estate. The warehouses, the trucks, the stock portfolio. All of it. It would go to a foundation dedicated to providing vocational training for at-risk youth. It would teach young men and women how to fix engines, how to weld, how to build. It would give them the tools to earn a living, not the charity to avoid one. I smiled. It was fitting. My money would go back to the sweat that created it. Clause 2. The Maya Banks Trust. I looked at Maya. She was showing Marcus a picture of a dog we used to have. She was safe. She was loved. But she would not be spoiled. The trust was generous, but it was locked. An iron vault. Beneficiary shall receive no distribution of principal until the age of 30. She would have to go to college. She would have to get a job. She would have to pay rent. She would have to learn how to budget for groceries. She would have to learn that if you break something, you have to pay to fix it. She would struggle. And I would let her. I would watch from the sidelines or from above, but I would not intervene. I would not clear this path for her, because I loved her too much to make the path smooth. And then there was the final clause. Clause 3. Damon Banks. I touched the paper. There was no money for Damon, not a dime, no trust fund, no safety net. But there was a letter, a sealed envelope attached to the will to be delivered only upon my death. Inside the envelope was the deed to the first house I ever bought, a small 2-bedroom shack in a working-class neighborhood. It was run down. It needed a new roof. It needed new plumbing. It was worth almost nothing in the current market. But it was an opportunity. If he wanted a home, he would have to fix it. He would have to sweat for it. He would have to bleed for it. I was leaving him a project, not a palace. I signed the document. Harrison Banks. The signature was strong. It didn't waver. It cut into the paper with finality. I closed the folder. I capped the pen. "It is done," I whispered. Maya looked up. "What are you doing, Grandpa?" she asked. "Just some homework, astronaut," I said, putting the folder away. "Just planning for the future." She stood up and walked over to me. She wrapped her arms around my neck. She smelled of vanilla shampoo and rain. "I love you, Grandpa," she said. "Thank you for bringing the piano back." I squeezed her tight. "I would bring the moon back if I could," I said. "But the piano is easier to tune." She pulled back and looked at me seriously. "You know," she said, "I saw Dad today." My heart skipped a beat. I tried to keep my face neutral. "You did?" I asked. "Where?" "He was at the bus stop," she said. "Near the library. He was wearing work clothes. He looked dirty." She paused, biting her lip. "He saw me on the bus," she said. He waved. I held my breath. "And what did you do?" I asked. Maya looked at the fire. "I waved back," she said softly. "I didn't get off the bus. I didn't call him. But I waved." She looked at me. "He looked tired, Grandpa. But he looked awake." "Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense," I said. I looked at Marcus. He raised his glass in a silent toast. Damon was out there. He was sleeping in a shelter. He was scrubbing cars. He was tired. He was hungry. But he was awake. For 40 years he had been sleepwalking through a dream of wealth I had created for him. Now the nightmare of poverty had woken him up. And in that wakefulness there was hope. I didn't know if he would make it. I didn't know if he would fill the blue book I gave him. I didn't know if he would stay sober. But that wasn't up to me anymore. I had released him. I had set him free from the crushing weight of my expectations and my enabling. I looked at the window. The reflection of the fire danced on the glass. I was 72 years old. My knees hurt. My back ached. I had lost a son to greed and found him again in the gutter. But as I sat there with my best friend and my granddaughter in a house that finally felt like a home, I realized I was the richest man in the world. Not because of the bank accounts, but because I finally knew the difference between value and price. I reached out and took Maya's hand. "Come on," I said. "Play me something." She smiled. She walked over to the Steinway, the piano I had tracked down and bought back from a pawn shop for 3 times its value. She sat on the bench. She placed her fingers on the keys. She began to play. It wasn't a sad song. It was Debussy, Clair de Lune. It was complicated and beautiful and full of light. I closed my eyes and listened. The music filled the room, pushing away the shadows. I had built an empire of trucks and ships. But this music, this girl, this peace, this was the only legacy that mattered. And this time I was going to protect it the right way, not with a checkbook, but with the truth. We spend our lives trying to give our children everything we didn't have, but in doing so, we often forget to give them what we did have: struggle, resilience, and gratitude. I built a shield of money around my son, thinking it would protect him, but it only suffocated his character. It turned him into a monster who saw his own father as an obstacle to his inheritance. Betrayal by your own blood is a wound that never fully heals, but it clarifies your vision. It taught me that legacy isn't about what you leave for someone, but what you leave in them. I had to break my son to save him, and in the ruins of our relationship, I found the strength to build a better future for my granddaughter. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and redemption. And tell me in the comments, do you think I was too hard on Damon, or did he get exactly what he needed? I read every single comment. See you in the next video.